hoping sleep will take it away. But when you close your eyes, the thoughts don't stop. They circle, they whisper, they tighten your chest. You wake up tired, restless, as if your mind ran a marathon while your body begged for peace. They told you rest comes from the perfect mattress, the perfect routine, the perfect life. But if that were true, why do so many with all the comfort still lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling? Why do you, with all your effort, still feel trapped inside the noise of your own head? The truth is this: sleep isn't just physical. It's a state of the soul, and the Stoics knew it. For centuries, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus uncovered a deeper rest, the kind that doesn't just close your eyes, but frees your spirit. A rest born from letting go of what you cannot control, from seeing stress for what it truly is, powerless against a calm and disciplined mind. Tonight, as you listen, something will shift. The weight pressing on your chest will loosen. The thoughts that haunt you will lose their grip. Your breath will steady, and with it, your heart. You'll feel peace spreading through you like warm light in a dark room. And tomorrow, you'll rise not only rested but stronger, untouchable, clear, ready to face the world without fear. This isn't just another meditation. It's your turning point. 3 hours of Stoic wisdom guiding you from chaos into stillness, from stress into freedom, from restless nights into deep, unshakable sleep. Are you ready to break free? Let's begin. You've taken the first step into a space most people never dare to enter, the space between wakefulness and rest, where the mind wrestles with fear, regret, and endless to-do lists. Here, sleep is not just about shutting the eyes, it's about releasing the grip of everything you hold during the day. And to release, you must understand. This is where the Stoics step in, not with soft words of comfort, but with truths so sharp they cut through illusion. Tonight, as you drift, you will learn to see sleep in a way that dissolves your deepest anxiety, not as a fragile pause from life, but as a teacher preparing you for freedom. Marcus Aurelius called sleep a kind of death, a rehearsal for the final silence that none of us can escape. At first, those words sound frightening. Death is the one thing we're taught to resist with all our strength. We cover it, hide it, pretend it won't come. But the Stoics refused to turn away from it. They looked at death directly, because in doing so they discovered a paradoxical gift. When you befriend the thought of death, life becomes lighter, easier, calmer. And if sleep is a daily rehearsal for that end, then every night is a chance to practice peace. Think of how much of your stress comes from holding on too tightly, clutching at plans, clinging to people, gripping anxieties as if they are lifelines. When Marcus Aurelius laid in his bed 2,000 years ago, he didn't soothe himself with promises that tomorrow would be easy. Instead, he reminded himself that tomorrow might not come at all. And strangely, this thought didn't fill him with panic. It gave him relief. Because if tomorrow isn't guaranteed, then the only thing left to do tonight is let go. Every day ends in the same way, the body growing heavy, the eyelids closing, the mind releasing its command. You have no control over when the exact moment of sleep takes you. You can resist, but eventually you surrender. The Stoics saw in this surrender a perfect metaphor for death, and far from darkening the spirit, it liberated it. By treating sleep as death's rehearsal, you practice letting go of control, and in that practice, you taste freedom. The reason so many people lie awake at night is because they fear surrender. They replay arguments, plan conversations, calculate outcomes, as if by sheer will they can keep life from slipping through their fingers. But this effort is futile, and the body knows it. The more you cling, the harder it is to rest. The Stoic approach is the opposite, to recognize that your control ends the moment you lie down. All you can govern is your attitude toward that truth. If you see sleep as a small death, then each night is a reminder that control is not the key to peace. Acceptance is. Seneca, another great Stoic, wrote that we die daily. Every night, something of us fades, and every morning, something is reborn. This perspective turns sleep into more than rest. It becomes a ritual of renewal. When you go to bed with this understanding, anxiety dissolves. Why worry about unfinished business when the day has already passed away? Why cling to tasks undone when the sun itself has set on them? You have been given a new beginning in the morning, and until then, you can rest as one who has finished the race for today. Think of the calm that comes when you no longer see sleep as fragile. Most people approach bedtime as a battle, fighting against wakefulness, fighting against the mind's chatter, fighting against the fear of not getting enough hours. But if sleep is death's rehearsal, then it is not a battle at all. It is the most natural event, as natural as the turning of the earth. When you see it this way, you step into bed, not with tension, but with reverence. There is also a deeper courage hidden in this view. Modern life trains us to hide from anything that reminds us of mortality. Yet, the Stoic understood that true freedom comes only when the fear of death loses its grip. By treating every night as practice, you strip that fear of its sting. If death is nothing but an endless sleep, and you've rehearsed for it thousands of times, what is left to fear? Suddenly, the worst thing that can happen loses its power. And when death loses its power, so does stress, so does anxiety, so does the gnawing fear of the unknown. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that death is not an evil, but a natural process, no more terrifying than being born. Sleep reflects this same truth. The mind wanders into dreams, the body shuts down its commands, and life goes quiet. Nothing painful, nothing frightening, just silence, just stillness. To embrace sleep as death's cousin is to realize that silence is not the enemy, but the cure. When you allow this thought to settle, you begin to approach bedtime differently. Instead of rushing under the covers with your phone still buzzing in your hand, instead of carrying the noise of the world into the silence of night, you step into the moment with humility. You acknowledge that this day, with all its stress, its triumphs, its mistakes, has now closed. It cannot be reopened. It has died, and you must let it die fully. By releasing it, you give your soul permission to follow the natural flow into rest. The Stoics also saw in this ritual a lesson in detachment. Every evening you let go of possessions, conversations, ambitions, as though setting them down at the door of death. And every morning you pick them back up with fresh eyes. This daily rhythm teaches you that nothing is truly yours, not your wealth, not your reputation, not even your breath. Each is borrowed for a time, and each must be returned. Seeing sleep this way makes you grateful for every new dawn, but also calm in every dusk. Think of the shift this brings to your nervous system. The stress hormones that surge when you worry about tomorrow's tasks, the tightness in your chest when you replay the day's mistakes, all of it melts when you recognize that tonight you die to it all. You no longer need to carry it into the night. You no longer need to prepare defenses against tomorrow's battles. Your only task is surrender. This surrender is not weakness, it is strength of the highest kind. For the Stoic, strength is not clinging, but letting go with dignity. When you release yourself into sleep, you are not escaping life. You are practicing mastery over it. You are proving that you can meet the ultimate test with calm, the test of silence, of nothingness, of death itself. And each night you pass this test, you rise stronger, more unshakable, less troubled by life's storms. Let this thought settle. Tonight, you will practice dying. You will close your eyes not with fear, but with courage. You will allow the day to fade, not because you failed, but because it was complete. You will trust the body's wisdom to pull you into rest, just as it has every night of your life. And when morning comes, you will greet it not with dread, but with gratitude, for you will have already tasted freedom in the night. The great gift of this practice is perspective. When you see sleep as death's rehearsal, suddenly the little worries shrink. The email unanswered, the argument unresolved, the plan uncertain. They all lose their weight in the face of mortality. None of them follow you into sleep, just as none of them follow you into death. They are shadows of the day, fading as the light goes. And in their absence, peace rushes in. This is why the Stoic view of sleep is so powerful. It doesn't deny your stress, it dismantles it. It shows you that anxiety survives only when you cling to the illusion of control, the illusion of permanence. By treating each night as the end of a life, you cut that illusion at the root. You rest not because everything is perfect, but because nothing needs to be. As you let this perspective sink deeper, you notice your breath slowing. Your chest softens. The endless stream of thoughts begins to thin. You are no longer fighting with the night. You are stepping into its embrace. And in that embrace there is no fear, no pressure, no unfinished business, only release. And this is where the true Stoic secret reveals itself. The practice of death each night is not morbid, but liberating. For when you master the art of dying daily, you discover the art of living fully. You carry into tomorrow a lighter heart, a calmer mind, and a resilience that cannot be shaken. Because you know that the worst has already been practiced, and it was not frightening at all. It was peace. The day has ended, the body grows heavy, and the mind prepares to step into silence. Yet even after accepting that sleep is a rehearsal for death, another challenge remains. The heart still carries weight. Old words echo, mistakes replay, regrets whisper, and victories go unnoticed. The Stoics knew that a restless mind cannot surrender easily to rest. So they turned to a ritual as old as philosophy itself, a practice Epictetus urged his students to embrace, the examen, a nightly reflection that clears the debris of the day. This was not a diary of gossip or endless chatter. It was a tool of liberation. Epictetus asked his followers to pause each evening and confront themselves with honesty. What did I do well? Where did I falter? How can I improve tomorrow? These three simple questions became keys that unlocked peace. They stripped away guilt without ignoring responsibility. They gave structure to the mind, transforming scattered thoughts into order. And when order is restored, sleep arrives naturally, like a tide returning to shore. The power of journaling lies in its ability to slow down racing thoughts. When the mind is burdened, it replays events in loops. A cruel word spoken in anger, a decision regretted, a moment of weakness, all return like unwelcome guests. But when they are written down, they leave the endless circle of the mind and settle on the page. The act of writing externalizes the storm, turning chaos into clarity. The pen becomes a scalpel, cutting through confusion and leaving only truth. This is why journaling before bed feels like unclenching a tight fist. You release what you've been gripping unconsciously all day. Epictetus insisted that no one should go to bed without examining the soul, not to shame oneself, but to stand as both judge and student. You acknowledge your flaws not to drown in guilt, but to grow in strength. You note your virtues not to boast, but to encourage continuation. This balance is essential. Without reflection, you drift blindly, repeating mistakes without awareness. But without kindness, reflection becomes cruelty, a whip that lashes endlessly. The Stoic examiner walks between these extremes, firm but compassionate, honest yet hopeful. Sleep is easier when the conscience is light. Many lie awake not because of noise outside, but because of noise within. They replay conversations where they failed to speak the truth, opportunities they ignored, temptations they fell into. These become shadows on the soul, demanding attention. By writing them down, you acknowledge them directly and silence their whispers. You create closure for the day, telling yourself, "This chapter is complete. Tomorrow, I will write a better one." This sense of closure is what primes the body for rest. Modern psychology now confirms what the Stoics practiced centuries ago. Studies show that expressive writing reduces stress, lowers blood pressure, and improves sleep quality. Neuroscience reveals that labeling emotions, turning them into words, calms the amygdala, the brain's fear center. What Epictetus prescribed as philosophy, science now affirms as medicine. Each line of journaling is like releasing a knot from the nervous system, easing the grip of stress. But Stoic journaling is more than therapy. It is training for virtue. The questions at night are not only about what happened, but about how you responded. Did you act with justice? Did you show courage when fear appeared? Did you seek wisdom instead of chasing distractions? Did you practice temperance, restraining desire instead of being enslaved by it? By asking these questions daily, you carve the soul like a sculptor shapes marble. Every night becomes a workshop where character is refined, and the clearer the character, the calmer the rest. This practice also builds resilience against tomorrow's challenges. When you see clearly where you stumbled, you create a plan for strength. Perhaps anger overcame you in a conversation. Writing it down, you acknowledge the trigger and resolve to pause longer before responding next time. Perhaps laziness tempted you to waste hours. Recording it, you commit to one small correction tomorrow. In this way, journaling transforms regret into preparation, guilt into determination. Instead of tormenting you, your mistakes serve you. There is a humility in this ritual that breaks the chains of pride. Most people prefer to blame others for their pain, but journaling demands that you look inward. Epictetus told his students that the first task of philosophy is to see what belongs to you and what does not. When you write, you realize that your anger is yours, your envy is yours, your distraction is yours, and because they are yours, they are within your power to change. This realization removes the poison of resentment and replaces it with the antidote of responsibility. Responsibility is heavy in the short term, but in the long term, it lightens the soul more than anything else. Another gift of journaling is gratitude. Seneca urged his readers to review blessings as much as faults. For what is more calming than ending the day in thanks? To write down not only where you failed, but where life was kind is to shift the mind from lack to abundance. You may record a kind word from a stranger, the warmth of food, the loyalty of a friend, the simple gift of breath. Gratitude softens the heart, loosens the grip of worry, and lays a foundation of joy that sleep builds upon. Without gratitude, reflection becomes a cold ledger. With it, it becomes a song of balance. Evening journaling also trains the mind to separate what is controllable from what is not. How many nights are lost worrying about things outside our hands, other people's opinions, random misfortunes, the tides of fortune? When you write them down, you see them clearly for what they are, and in that clarity, you learn to set them aside. You say, "This belongs to fate, not to me," and having set them aside, you sleep lighter, because you no longer carry burdens that were never yours to bear. The discipline of writing each night creates continuity in life. Without reflection, days blur together into a fog of habit. But when each evening is marked with a pause, a record, a weighing of the soul, then time becomes meaningful. You see your progress, however small. You witness your growth, however gradual. And progress is the greatest comfort to the soul, for nothing troubles us more than the feeling of stagnation. Journaling proves to you that you are moving forward and that knowledge itself is rest. It is also worth noting that this ritual is not about eloquence or style. Marcus Aurelius himself, whose meditations remain a timeless treasure, never wrote for an audience. He wrote as a man speaking to his own soul. His words were raw, repetitive at times, even fragmented, but their power lies in their honesty. The same is true for your journaling. No one else needs to read it. No one else needs to approve. It is a mirror held only for you. And in that mirror, you see yourself clearly, stripped of masks, preparing your soul for peace. As you practice this night after night, journaling becomes more than a habit. It becomes a form of purification. The page absorbs your frustrations, your fears, your doubts, leaving you lighter. It becomes a ritual as sacred as washing before sleep. Just as the body is cleansed of dirt, the soul is cleansed of agitation, and with a clean soul, rest comes without struggle. The Stoics believed philosophy must be lived, not just studied. Evening journaling embodies this truth. It is philosophy in action, philosophy applied to the smallest details of daily life. You are not only reflecting on justice, courage, wisdom and temperance in the abstract, you are measuring them against your own actions. Each night becomes a bridge between principle and practice, and with each crossing, the bridge grows stronger. When you close the book and set down the pen, a sense of closure fills you. The day has been honored. Its lessons have been recorded. Its burdens have been lifted. You are no longer at war with the past, nor anxious about the future. You stand in the present moment, ready for the calm that only surrender brings. The examen does not guarantee a perfect tomorrow, but it does guarantee a peaceful tonight. And so the mind rests easier, the heart beats slower, the weight of unresolved emotions fades. You do not enter sleep as an exile chased by regrets, but as a philosopher who has examined, accepted, and released. This is the true gift of journaling, the ability to close the day with clarity, to seal it like a completed letter, and to step into the night free. The day has died, but you have prepared the soul to live again at dawn. And with this, the night no longer feels like an enemy. It becomes a sanctuary, a temple of silence, where the examined life finds its deepest rest. The page has been closed, the thoughts have been set down, and the soul feels lighter after reflection. But even with a clear record of the day, another barrier often lingers. It is not the past that troubles the mind now, but the weight of tomorrow. The future stretches out in shadows, uncertain and unpredictable, and it is this uncertainty that keeps many eyes open long after the body longs for rest. This is where the Stoics turn to their most radical practice, amor fati, the love of fate. Not mere acceptance, not reluctant endurance, but love. A complete embrace of whatever tomorrow may bring, as though it were chosen deliberately for you. The restless heart trembles when it thinks of what it cannot control. Meetings, accidents, sudden news, the moods of others, the chance of loss, all these lie outside your reach. Yet still the mind clings to them, rehearsing answers, preparing defenses, calculating outcomes. This clinging is the very rope that strangles rest. To release it, you must go beyond tolerance. You must turn toward what is uncertain and say not only, "I will endure you," but "I welcome you." This is amor fati, the antidote to the fear of the unknown. When Marcus Aurelius wrote that a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything thrown into it, he was describing the spirit of amor fati. Fate throws both joy and suffering, both fortune and loss. The ordinary mind complains, "Why this? Why me?" The Stoic fire consumes and transforms, saying, "This too belongs. This too has value." In the context of sleep, this means that tomorrow's storms no longer haunt tonight. You do not try to build defenses in advance. You do not fight with phantoms of what might be. You lie down with the certainty that whatever arrives will be fuel for your growth. And when you believe this fully, the mind finally releases its grip. Loving fate at bedtime begins with recognizing the truth of your position. The future is not yours to command. You may act with wisdom and virtue, but you cannot bend events to your will. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control, the dividing line between what belongs to you and what does not. At night, this line becomes even sharper. What belongs to you now? Your choice to rest, your choice to breathe calmly, your choice to surrender to sleep. What does not belong to you? Everything else. Tomorrow's conversations, outcomes, surprises, they lie in the hands of fate. By acknowledging this divide, you strip tomorrow of its power to rob you tonight. But Stoicism does not stop at dividing. It demands more. It teaches not only that you must release the uncontrollable, but that you can learn to love it. This is the secret that breaks anxiety at its root. To merely accept is to still carry resistance in the heart, like a clenched fist hidden behind your back. To love is to open both hands and receive, unarmed, unafraid. At bedtime, this shift is transformative. You whisper to yourself, "Whatever tomorrow brings, I will not only endure, I will embrace. Whatever comes will be my teacher. Whatever comes will belong to me." And in that whisper, the grip of fear loosens. Think of how often sleeplessness is tied to dread. A doctor's appointment, a looming deadline, a conversation you cannot avoid. All of these swell in the imagination at night. The more you resist them, the larger they become. But when you practice amor fati, the dread evaporates. You no longer say, "I hope this does not happen." You say, "If this happens, it belongs to me, and I will grow from it." Even suffering becomes less sharp under this lens. If pain arrives, it becomes the chance to practice courage. If loss arrives, it becomes the chance to practice detachment. If joy arrives, it becomes a gift freely received. With such a posture, nothing can truly threaten you, and with no threat, sleep comes easily. Seneca reminded his readers that no wind is favorable to the sailor who has no port, but to the Stoic who embraces amor fati, every wind is favorable because every direction is part of the voyage. Applied to bedtime, this means that you stop demanding calm seas before you can rest. You stop waiting for perfect conditions, for certainty, for guarantees. You rest because every wind, every tide will carry you where you need to go. You rest because you trust the voyage itself. This trust unknots the tension in your body, slows the racing of the heart, and opens the gates of sleep. Amor fati also redefines success. Most people tie their rest to outcomes. Sleep comes easily only if the day went well, if plans succeeded, if approval was earned. But this is a fragile foundation, because life rarely follows our plans. The Stoic detaches rest from outcomes by tying it to virtue. If you acted with integrity today, then the day was successful, regardless of results. And if tomorrow brings difficulty, then that too will be an arena for virtue. This shift changes everything. Rest is no longer hostage to fortune. Rest becomes yours the moment you align with virtue and release the future. There is beauty in loving what has not yet happened. It means trusting that life, in its entirety, is a work of art greater than your single perspective can grasp. Marcus Aurelius often wrote that the universe weaves events together as part of a greater design, like threads in a tapestry. To love fate is to see your own life as one of those threads, essential though not central, woven perfectly into the whole. When you hold this vision at night, the little anxieties about tomorrow fade. For how can you fear a thread when the tapestry itself is harmonious? How can you dread a single day when the whole is already complete? Amor fati also liberates you from resentment. Without it, every hardship feels like an assault, every disappointment like a theft. With it, every hardship becomes an ally, every disappointment a lesson. This is not passive resignation, it is active transformation. You do not merely lie down saying, "I cannot change tomorrow." You lie down saying, "Tomorrow will be exactly what I need, even if I cannot yet see why." This attitude is the purest medicine for insomnia born of worry. The heart rests when it no longer sees the future as enemy territory. There is another layer to this practice, the relationship between body and mind. Stress about tomorrow often manifests physically: tight shoulders, shallow breath, restless tossing. Amor fati softens this physical armor. By shifting the mind to embrace, the body follows with release. The chest loosens, the breath deepens, the muscles unwind. Sleep is not forced, it flows. The Stoics understood that the ruling faculty, the hegemonikon, governs the rest of the being. When the mind loves fate, the body obeys with peace. For those who find it hard to practice, the key lies in rehearsal. Just as sleep was seen as rehearsal for death, amor fati can be rehearsed nightly. Before bed, recall one event of the day that disturbed you. Instead of labeling it unfair or unbearable, practice saying, "This too belongs. This too is mine." Repeat until the sting fades. Then turn to tomorrow, to the unknowns, and extend the same embrace. Over time, the habit deepens. Fate ceases to feel like an enemy. The unknown ceases to breed fear, and sleep, once disturbed by endless planning, becomes smooth and uninterrupted. The practice of amor fati at night also strengthens courage for the day. For if you have trained yourself to love even the worst possibilities, then daylight holds no terrors. You rise lighter, not because fate has spared you, but because you have already welcomed it. In this way, restful nights feed resilient days, and resilient days feed restful nights. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing, a spiral upward into strength and serenity. This practice is not about surrendering effort. The Stoics never taught passivity. You will still act tomorrow with reason, with courage, with virtue. But tonight, effort ends. Tonight, the torch is handed to fate, and fate will carry it through the darkness, whether through calm or storm. To love this truth is to rest without resistance, to drift into sleep without chains. As the final thoughts of the day pass, amor fati becomes more than philosophy. It becomes a lullaby sung by the soul to itself. A gentle assurance that whatever dawn brings will be yours to shape, yours to endure, yours to love. With that assurance, the heart no longer clings, the mind no longer wrestles, the body no longer resists. Sleep arrives as a gift, effortless and pure, carried on the wings of fate itself. And so, after reflection has cleared the heart, after journaling has closed the day, amor fati opens the door to the night. You rest not because tomorrow is safe, but because tomorrow belongs to you, in whatever form it comes. You rest because you have learned the art of loving fate, and in that love, fear dissolves, stress loses its grip, and rest descends with ease. After learning to release tomorrow into the arms of fate, the heart feels lighter, but the mind often continues its restless play. Thoughts slip in, whispering about what could go wrong, what might be lost, what pain could arrive uninvited. Even when the body longs for stillness, the mind projects shadows into the night. The Stoics, wise to this tendency, developed a practice both radical and calming, the art of negative visualization. Instead of hiding from the worst, they turned to face it softly, deliberately, as if rehearsing with the darkness itself. By rehearsing what might come, they stripped it of power. By picturing the loss before it arrived, they discovered gratitude in what remained. And in doing so, they invited the kind of stillness that makes deep rest possible. The essence of this practice is simple, yet profound. Take time in the quiet of evening to picture what you fear, not as an act of torment, but as a gentle training. Seneca advised his students to contemplate poverty while they still had wealth, to consider illness while they were healthy, to think of death while they were alive. His reason was not to spoil joy, but to protect it. For what is fragile becomes more precious when you recognize its impermanence. When you acknowledge that health may fail, tonight's strong breath becomes sweeter. When you recognize that possessions can vanish, the simple comfort of a bed feels like luxury. By rehearsing the worst, you learn to cherish the present, and gratitude silences restlessness. At night, when anxieties crowd in, this practice becomes especially powerful. Many cannot sleep because they are secretly battling visions of disaster. They push them away, only for the fears to grow larger in the shadows. Negative visualization reverses the battle. By choosing to look directly at what the mind fears, you remove its element of surprise. Fear feeds on avoidance. It starves on exposure. When you calmly rehearse loss, you teach yourself that the worst is survivable and therefore not worth sleepless dread. There is a method to this. Begin by recalling one thing you value deeply: a person, a possession, a freedom. Then consider gently what it would mean if it were taken. If your home were gone, would you still live? Yes. If your health declined, could you still act with courage? Yes. If tomorrow were your last day, could you die with dignity? Yes. In this exercise, the mind grows stronger, not weaker. Each loss rehearsed becomes proof of resilience. Each vision of absence becomes a reminder that the essence of life remains untouched by circumstance. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about the fragility of life, reminding himself daily that loved ones, wealth, and even his own empire were passing. He did this not to sink into despair, but to armor his spirit with truth. He knew that clinging breeds suffering, while preparation breeds peace. To him, life was a loan from nature, with no guarantee of duration. To live without this awareness was to live in illusion. To sleep without it was to sleep in denial. But to embrace it meant waking and sleeping with gratitude, always aware that each moment could be the last. This practice is not about dark obsession. It is about balance. The Stoic does not dwell endlessly on tragedy, but visits it like a trainer visits the gym, strengthening muscles that protect against fear. Just as lifting weights prepares the body for strain, rehearsing loss prepares the soul for reality. At night, this rehearsal trains the mind to face uncertainty with calm. If the worst comes, you have already practiced. If it does not, you rest in gratitude. Either way, you win peace. Another benefit of negative visualization is perspective. Daily troubles, missed opportunities, minor arguments, unfinished tasks shrink when compared to the contemplation of real loss. When you consider the fragility of life itself, the frustration of an unanswered email or the inconvenience of a delayed plan loses its sting. This shift in perspective releases tension from the mind and clears space for stillness. Sleep arrives more easily when trivialities no longer have power to disturb. This exercise also deepens compassion. When you visualize the absence of those you love, you awaken tenderness toward them in the present. How many times are harsh words spoken carelessly, under the illusion that tomorrow is guaranteed? By practicing the thought that tomorrow is not certain, the heart softens, and gratitude for loved ones grows. Going to bed with this awareness fills the soul with affection, a warmth that replaces anxiety. And with a warm heart, sleep embraces you quickly. Seneca suggested occasionally living as if poverty had already arrived, sleeping on the ground, eating simple food, wearing rough clothes. This voluntary discomfort is a physical form of negative visualization. It reminds you that even stripped of comfort, you can survive, even flourish. At night, this translates into reassurance. If fate were to take away tomorrow's pleasures, you have already tasted their absence and found yourself unbroken. This makes you fearless, and fearlessness is the soil from which deep rest grows. For many, the greatest fear is loss of control. Negative visualization dismantles this illusion gently. You see that even if control slips entirely, you remain capable of courage. You remain capable of choice in attitude, even when choice in circumstances is gone. Epictetus, who was born a slave, embodied this truth. He taught that while you cannot command fate, you can command your mind. By rehearsing worst-case scenarios, you practice this command. You realize that the essence of your being is never at the mercy of events. And once you grasp this, the claws of anxiety release their hold. There is also a paradoxical joy hidden in this practice. When you think of losing what you now have, you wake up to its beauty. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. A simple breath becomes a miracle. A quiet night becomes a gift. This joy is not shallow pleasure, but deep appreciation, rooted in awareness of fragility. Going to bed with this awareness makes even the smallest comforts, warmth, silence, the softness of a blanket, feel like treasures. Gratitude relaxes the mind more deeply than luxury ever could. Another layer of benefit lies in training for equanimity. Negative visualization helps you approach both fortune and misfortune with balance. If tomorrow brings success, you will not cling too tightly because you know it can pass. If tomorrow brings hardship, you will not despair because you rehearsed its arrival. This balance keeps the soul steady, like a ship with an anchor in deep waters, and a steady soul does not toss and turn at night. This practice also builds courage for the unexpected. Life's greatest shocks are devastating not only because of pain, but because of surprise. By rehearsing them mentally, you reduce the element of shock. You cannot eliminate grief, but you can strip it of chaos. You cannot stop misfortune, but you can stop panic. This training is why the Stoics could face exile, poverty, and death with calm. For them, the worst had already been practiced, and therefore it carried less sting. To bring this into your evening, approach it softly. Do not flood your mind with every disaster at once. Begin small. Picture the loss of something minor and reflect calmly on your ability to endure. Then gradually move deeper until even the thought of life's greatest losses becomes bearable to contemplate. Over time, you develop a spiritual callus, not one of hardness, but of resilience. This resilience, once established, makes nightly rest unshakable. The key to success is gentleness. Negative visualization is not meant to create terror, but to dissolve it. Approach it as a teacher, not a punishment. Meet each scenario with steady breath, calm acknowledgement, and the reminder that virtue remains intact, no matter what fate takes. By pairing this practice with gratitude, you prevent it from becoming grim. You rehearse loss, then turn immediately to appreciation for what still is. This rhythm of contemplation and gratitude trains the soul for balance. Over time, this nightly practice transforms your relationship with fear itself. You stop running from it. You stop bargaining with it. You meet it like an equal, acknowledging its presence, learning its limits. And when fear loses its disguise, it loses its power. Anxiety dissolves because the unknown has been brought into the light of the mind, examined and accepted. The night no longer feels threatening. It becomes a sanctuary for this rehearsal, a sacred space where fear is transformed into strength. And so, after releasing control into the hands of fate, the Stoic gently rehearses even the darkest possibilities, not to drown in despair, but to strip fear of its sting, to awaken gratitude for what remains, and to train the soul to rest, even in the face of uncertainty. This is the art of negative visualization before rest, a practice that replaces restless dread with stillness, fragility with appreciation, and anxiety with the calm strength that welcomes sleep like an old friend. After rehearsing loss and stripping fear of its power, the heart learns gratitude and the mind begins to loosen its grip on dread. Yet even with gratitude alive and fear dissolved, another enemy often rises in the night, the flood of impressions that rush into the mind uninvited, a memory of a harsh word, a replay of a mistake, a prediction of failure, a headline read earlier in the day. Each bursts in, demanding attention. These impressions are like sparks falling on dry grass. If left unchecked, they ignite into storms of thought that keep the eyes open long past the body's readiness for rest. The Stoics saw this danger clearly, and they armed themselves with a powerful discipline, the practice of objective impressions, or fantasia cataleptica. It is the art of seeing events and thoughts exactly as they are, without distortion, without the coloring of emotion, without being dragged by judgment. The restless mind does not suffer from facts, but from the judgments attached to them. This person insulted me becomes, they ruined my day. I failed at this task becomes, I am worthless. Tomorrow holds uncertainty becomes tomorrow will destroy me. These added layers are not truth. They are interpretation. And it is interpretation that fuels anxiety. By practicing objective impressions, you separate what happened from what you tell yourself about what happened. You reduce each thought to its bare frame. You say, "This is only a word. This is only an action. This is only a sound. Nothing more." In this stripping away, thoughts lose their claws. They pass across the mind like shadows, unable to harm, unable to control. Marcus Aurelius trained himself in this practice constantly. When disturbed, he reminded himself, "This is nothing but a body pressing against mine," or "This is nothing but sound carried by the air." By reducing events to their simplest form, he cut away the story that the mind tried to weave. This act does not deny the event, but removes its poison. And at night, when impressions swirl, this practice becomes a shield. You meet each thought with clarity, refusing to let it spiral into torment. You reduce it to its essence, and in doing so, you rob it of its power to disturb. This discipline is not cold detachment, but liberation. Most suffering arises not from the event itself, but from the meaning we pile upon it. Epictetus taught his students that people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. To practice objective impressions is to return to things as they are, before your mind paints them with fear or anger. A racing thought arrives. What if I fail tomorrow? The Stoic responds, tomorrow is an event not yet here. At this moment, it is only a thought. This response shifts the entire experience. The racing slows, the spiral ends, the thought passes, the mind rests, no longer chained by its own stories. At night, impressions often feel louder because silence amplifies them. With no distractions, the mind turns inward and begins replaying everything unresolved. Here, objective impressions act like a calm hand, placing each thought into its proper place. You say, this is only memory, this is only expectation, this is only sensation in the body. By doing so, you stop identifying with every thought. You stop fusing with them as though they define you. Instead, you see them as passing appearances, no different than clouds moving across the sky. This separation creates space between you and the storm, and in that space, peace grows. The discipline of detachment is not about suppressing thoughts. Suppression strengthens them. Instead, it is about reframing them so that their weight dissolves. Suppose a memory of embarrassment arises. The ordinary mind says, this proves I am flawed. This shows I am weak. The Stoic mind says, this is only a recollection of words and gestures, nothing more. With this simple shift, the sting fades. Or consider a worry about health. The ordinary mind says, this means disaster is coming. The Stoic mind says, this is only a thought of discomfort, not yet a reality. Again, the fear loses its teeth. By reframing impressions, you remove their power to keep you awake. Objective impressions also protect you from being swept into exaggeration. The mind at night tends to enlarge problems. A small mistake becomes catastrophic. A single conflict becomes proof of rejection. A single symptom becomes evidence of decline. Practicing fantasia catalepticae halts this exaggeration. You tell yourself, this is only one event. This is only one detail. This is not the whole. By grounding yourself in the factual, you prevent the mind from spinning fictions that torture you. Sleep thrives in truth, not in distortion. Another gift of this practice is humility. When you reduce events to their essence, you realize how little they truly weigh in the grand scale. The insult that once burned becomes only a sound that passed. The failure that once haunted becomes only a past action, now outside control. Even pain, when viewed objectively, is reduced to a sensation, a message from the body, not a cosmic punishment. This humility prevents your mind from inflating events into mountains that block rest. You see them as pebbles, and pebbles do not disturb the night. This discipline also teaches patience. By recognizing impressions as fleeting, you no longer feel urgency to resolve them immediately. A thought arises. You do not chase it. You let it pass. A memory comes. You do not wrestle with it. You let it fade. In this patience, the mind ceases to fight against itself, and the body follows into calmness. Sleep is not forced. It arrives naturally when the fight is over. Objective impressions also deepen self-awareness. When you separate event from judgment, you begin to see the patterns of your mind. You notice that it tends to exaggerate, to predict disaster, to cling to insult. This awareness itself is healing. Once you see the mind's habit, you no longer fall victim to it blindly. You catch it in the act and say, "This is only a habit of thought, nothing more." In this way, nighttime reflection becomes training for freedom. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself of the cosmic scale. He would say, "Consider how small the things are that disturb you, and how vast the universe." This is another form of objective impression. By placing events against the backdrop of eternity, their weight diminishes. The mind, seeing their smallness, lets them go. And letting go is the essence of sleep. In modern terms, this practice aligns with cognitive techniques used to calm anxiety. Psychologists speak of cognitive restructuring, challenging distorted thoughts and replacing them with accurate ones. The Stoics anticipated this centuries ago. They taught that thoughts are not facts. They taught that impressions must be tested before being believed. At night, this becomes invaluable. Instead of accepting every racing thought as truth, you pause, you test, you reduce. The thought loses its grip, and rest flows in. There is also a spiritual depth to this practice. By separating impressions from judgment, you align with the Logos, the rational order of the cosmos. You see things as they are, not as you wish or fear. This alignment creates harmony within, mirroring the harmony without. And harmony is the natural state of rest. When the soul is in tune with reality, it no longer resists. Resistance ends, stillness begins. Bringing this into practice requires consistency. Each night, as thoughts arise, you meet them with clarity. Not harshness, not suppression, but calm naming. This is only a memory. This is only an expectation. This is only sensation. Over time, this becomes second nature. The flood of impressions still arrives, but instead of drowning, you float. Instead of being swept away, you remain anchored. This anchor is what allows the body to release fully into sleep. The discipline of objective impressions is, in essence, the art of seeing truly. It clears away the fog of judgment, leaving only the bare reality, which is rarely as frightening as the stories we tell. By practicing it nightly, you transform the battlefield of the mind into a place of calm observation. And from calm observation flows silence. From silence flows rest. And from rest flows renewal. Thus, after facing the worst with negative visualization, the Stoic does not stop there. They go further, training themselves to meet every impression with clarity, to separate truth from judgment, and to free themselves from the grip of racing thoughts. This is the path of detachment from external impressions, not indifference, but liberation, a discipline that quiets the mind and opens the door to the deep, unbroken sleep of the soul at peace. The racing thoughts lose their grip when seen clearly for what they are, but another layer of disturbance still lingers beneath the surface. It is not a single memory, not a fleeting impression, but the heavy atmosphere of stress that clings to the body like smoke. Even when thoughts are calmed, the nervous system holds on to tension from the day, deadlines, pressures, arguments, expectations. Stress is the residue of living, and at night it often becomes the invisible weight that keeps the body from surrendering to rest. The Stoics confronted this weight in a way few dare to, by redefining its meaning entirely. They placed stress into their unique framework of value, teaching that many things we label as urgent or destructive belong in the category of indifference. By reordering how stress is perceived, they stripped it of power, allowing the mind to settle and the body to rest. The Stoics divided life into three categories: what is good, what is bad, and what is indifferent. The good was virtue, justice, courage, wisdom, and temperance. The bad was vice, cowardice, greed, injustice, folly. Everything else, whether wealth or poverty, health or sickness, pleasure or pain, fell into the realm of indifference. Some were preferred, such as health and comfort, while others were dispreferred, such as illness or hardship. But none of them touched the core of goodness, because none of them affected the soul's capacity for virtue. Stress, in this light, is not evil. It is not good either. It is indifferent. When you classify stress as indifferent, something extraordinary happens. Its sting fades. You stop treating it as a personal failure or a looming disaster. Instead, you recognize it as part of the shifting weather of life, no different than rain or heat. The mind resists less, because what is indifferent cannot define you. An anxious meeting, a pressing task, a heavy workload, all become conditions, not verdicts. They do not touch your worth. They do not stain your virtue. They do not reach your inner citadel. With this shift, the heart stops gripping stress as though survival depends on it. And when the grip relaxes, the body begins to follow. Muscles soften, breathing steadies, and sleep has space to enter. Epictetus reminded his students constantly that only our use of impressions belongs to us. External circumstances, whether comfortable or harsh, remain beyond our command. Stressful events belong in that category. You may prefer ease, but ease is not necessary for goodness. You may dislike pressure, but pressure is not destruction. By reclassifying stress, you stop confusing it with harm. It is not an enemy, but a condition. This clarity reframes the way you carry it into the night. Stress may still exist, but it no longer owns you, and because it no longer owns you, it cannot control your rest. This reclassification also guards against the spiral of guilt. Many people lie awake not only stressed, but ashamed of being stressed. They think, if I were stronger, I would not feel this. But the Stoics remove this trap. Stress is indifferent. Feeling its weight does not mark you as weak. What matters is your response. If you respond with virtue, patience, courage, temperance, then stress itself becomes material for growth. The very thing that once tormented you becomes training. And when the mind reframes stress as practice, it loses its bite. Anxiety shifts into opportunity, and opportunity invites rest rather than robs it. Viewing stress as indifferent also prevents exaggeration. The mind has a habit of inflating pressures until they feel life-threatening. But when seen as indifferent, stress shrinks back to its proper size. A looming deadline is not a sentence of doom. A difficult conversation is not a collapse of identity. A restless body is not a failure of the self. Each is a circumstance, preferable to avoid perhaps, but harmless to the soul. By restoring this balance, the mind stops dramatizing. Drama is the fuel of insomnia. Balance is its cure. Marcus Aurelius practiced this discipline constantly. He reminded himself that external troubles, no matter how sharp, were nothing but movements of nature. If insult came, it was only air disturbed by vocal cords. If pain came, it was only signals in the body. If stress came, it was only a sensation, not a verdict on his soul. By reducing stress to indifferent status, he freed himself to rest even while ruling an empire. This shows that no level of responsibility or pressure need rob sleep if you master the art of classification. This practice also prepares the nervous system for calm. Stress often creates a feedback loop. The body reacts with tension. The mind interprets that tension as danger, and the cycle strengthens. By reminding yourself that stress is indifferent, you break the loop. You tell the mind, this sensation is not threat, only pressure. The body, hearing this message, begins to soften. The breath deepens, the pulse slows, the cycle reverses. Sleep does not arrive by force, but by the gentle reorientation of value. Another benefit of this reframing is freedom from envy and comparison. Much stress arises from measuring yourself against others, their success, their ease, their reputation. But when stress is seen as indifferent, these comparisons lose weight. The fortunes of others, whether lighter or heavier than yours, are not measures of worth. Your virtue remains your own, untouched by their circumstances. Freed from envy, the heart rests. Freed from rivalry, the night grows quiet. Seneca often reminded his readers that fortune plays with us all. Some days bring ease, others bring difficulty. To demand constant comfort is to fight the nature of existence itself. But to accept difficulty as indifferent is to find peace in all weather. At night, this means you no longer delay rest until life is perfect. You rest because perfection is not the condition of sleep. Clarity is. And clarity comes from knowing what truly matters. The practical way to apply this at bedtime is through reflection. When stress arises, instead of asking, "How do I escape this?" ask, "What category does this belong to?" If it belongs to virtue, attend to it. If it belongs to indifference, release it. This mental act creates a sorting process that calms the mind. You stop wrestling with every pressure as if it were life or death. You see them for what they are, temporary, shifting, indifferent. And in that recognition, the storm calms. This classification also breeds courage. If stress is indifferent, then its presence is not a reason to fear. Even if tomorrow brings more pressure, it does not harm the essence of who you are. You remain free to act with justice, courage, wisdom, and temperance, no matter the stress. This realization is profoundly empowering. Anxiety diminishes when you know that stress cannot touch your true self. With this knowledge, you go to bed not as a victim of circumstance, but as a participant in training. Stress becomes material, and material cannot define you. The Stoics were not naive. They knew the body feels stress and that its sensations are real. But they also knew that sensation and judgment are not the same. Pain may ache, pressure may tighten, but the judgment, "This is unbearable," is optional. By practicing this distinction, you make space for rest, even in discomfort. The body may hum with tension, but the mind, unchained from false judgments, can still settle. Reframing stress as indifferent also strengthens gratitude. For when you stop treating stress as evil, you begin to notice the good hidden within it. Stress signals that you care, that you strive, that you are alive in the arena of life. It reveals opportunities to grow in patience, endurance, and clarity. With this perspective, even the pressures of the day become reminders of your strength. Gratitude grows, and gratitude is one of the deepest sedatives for the restless soul. In time, this discipline reshapes your relationship with life. Stress no longer feels like an invader, but like passing weather. You no longer wait for its absence to rest. You rest despite its presence. You no longer treat it as proof of weakness. You treat it as proof of opportunity. Each night when stress arises, you remind yourself, it is indifferent. It is not who I am. It is not good or bad. It is simply here. And with that recognition, the weight lifts. Thus, after detaching from racing impressions, the Stoic carries the practice further, redefining stress itself. By placing it among the indifferents, by refusing to let it dictate worth, by turning it into material for virtue, the restless heart learns to quiet. Stress may still knock at the door, but it is no longer allowed inside the citadel of the soul. And when the citadel stands firm, the gates of sleep open wide. When stress is placed in its proper category as indifferent, the soul discovers an inner calm that no external pressure can disturb. Yet even with this strength, the mind sometimes shrinks into itself, circling small concerns until they grow larger than they truly are. A single mistake, a single worry, a single task can feel like the whole universe pressing down. The Stoics offered a way out of this narrowness, a practice that stretches the vision beyond the walls of the self. They called it the view from above, a perspective so wide that personal anxieties dissolve into the vastness of the cosmos. Practiced at night, it lifts the heart out of the cage of worry and places it into the quiet order of the universe, preparing the soul for rest. The human mind tends to magnify its own troubles, the quarrel with a colleague, the missed opportunity, the small failure, all loom as though nothing else exists. But when viewed from above, from the vantage point of a city, then a country, then the earth itself, these events shrink to their true size. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that his own life was a speck within the endless expanse of time and space. He would write of nations rising and falling, of countless lives before his and countless lives after. Against this backdrop, the sting of personal anxiety loses force. If entire empires vanish into dust, what weight does one restless thought hold? The view from above begins with lifting awareness step by step. First, see yourself in your bed, resting in the silence of the room. Then raise the view to your house, your street, your city. With each step upward, what seemed overwhelming begins to shrink. The conversation replayed endlessly in your mind becomes a brief exchange in a single household. The deadline that felt crushing becomes one among millions of tasks unfolding across the globe tonight. The worry that felt unbearable becomes a grain of sand on the shore of human history. This gradual widening of perspective loosens the grip of fear and invites serenity. This practice is not about denial of pain, but about proportion. The Stoics knew that perspective alters experience. When the mind narrows, pain grows heavier. When the mind widens, pain becomes manageable. The view from above restores proportion by placing personal troubles within the immensity of existence. What is anxiety compared to the turning of galaxies? What is stress compared to the rhythm of seasons, the rise and fall of generations? This sense of scale does not erase your experience but anchors it, reminding you that life's burdens are lighter when seen within the whole. Another fruit of this exercise is humility. From above, the self is revealed as both small and connected. You see that your struggles, while real, are not unique. Countless others endure the same. Countless others have already faced worse. Countless others will face similar challenges tomorrow. This dissolves the illusion of isolation, the feeling that your anxieties single you out. Instead, you feel kinship with the human family. Shared fragility breeds compassion, and compassion softens the restless heart. This view also brings awe. As you lift awareness beyond your city, beyond your continent, beyond the earth itself, you enter the silence of stars. The endless night sky, filled with countless suns and worlds, stretches without boundary. In this vastness, human troubles are revealed for what they are, fleeting shadows within eternity. Awe quiets the mind more deeply than comfort ever can. It shifts attention from the petty to the infinite, from the restless to the eternal. And awe, by its very nature, opens the soul to stillness. Marcus Aurelius wrote that one should look at the whole of time and the whole of substance and see how small a portion we occupy. He used this perspective to remain calm while carrying the weight of empire. You can use the same practice to remain calm while carrying the weight of daily life. Whether your burden is a deadline, a conflict, or a fear, the view from above dilutes it into the flow of the whole. What felt unbearable becomes a moment among countless moments, and sleep becomes easier when the burden is scaled down. This exercise also strengthens acceptance. From the cosmic view, you see the laws of nature at work, the cycles of birth and decay, the movement of seasons, the inevitability of change. You realize that your anxieties are not accidents, but part of the same order that governs stars and rivers. To resist them is to resist the universe itself. To accept them is to harmonize with it. Harmony brings peace, and peace prepares the soul for rest. Another benefit is detachment from ego. Much anxiety grows from concern over reputation, appearance, and approval. But from the cosmic height, these concerns appear trivial. Who will remember the harsh words spoken today 100 years from now? Who will recall the minor failure that feels so sharp tonight? From above, such things dissolve like mist in the morning sun. The ego's demands lose force, and what remains is the simple truth of being, a truth that needs no defense and carries no anxiety. Practicing the view from above also builds resilience. When you see your life as a fragment of a vast whole, you stop expecting perfection. You stop demanding that everything bend to your will. You accept that storms come and go, just as they do across seas and skies. This resilience means you do not break under stress. You bend with it, knowing it is part of the greater order. Such resilience is the soil of deep rest, because a mind that bends does not snap in the silence of night. Modern science echoes this wisdom. Psychologists speak of perspective-taking as a tool against rumination. When individuals zoom out to see their problems in a broader context, anxiety decreases. Neuroscience shows that awe activates networks in the brain that reduce self-focus, calming the default mode network responsible for restless thinking. What the Stoics practiced as philosophy, modern research confirms as effective. The view from above quiets the ego-driven mind and invites a state of calm readiness for sleep. To practice this at bedtime, begin with awareness of the body. Feel yourself resting. Then expand the frame slowly. Room, house, street, city, country, world, stars. At each step, remind yourself that your worries occupy only a small space. Repeat until the mind releases its grip. With practice, the perspective comes quickly and rest follows. The view from above also deepens gratitude. From the cosmic perspective, the fact of existence itself becomes miraculous. To breathe, to think, to feel, even with anxiety, is to participate in the great unfolding of the cosmos. Gratitude for existence itself overshadows dissatisfaction with circumstances. Gratitude calms the restless mind more deeply than resolution of problems ever could. This practice also trains courage for death. When you see life as a brief spark within eternity, the fear of losing it softens. Death becomes not a disaster, but a return to the whole. Practiced nightly, this thought reduces the ultimate anxiety, leaving smaller worries powerless. When even death loses its terror, sleeplessness caused by minor stressors fades into silence. At the deepest level, the view from above aligns you with Logos, the rational order of the cosmos. To see yourself as part of that order is to trust its flow. You stop clinging to outcomes, stop wrestling with chance, stop fearing change. Trust replaces resistance, and trust is the foundation of rest. Thus, after redefining stress as indifferent, the Stoic rises above the self, taking the cosmic view. In that vastness, anxieties dissolve into perspective, ego shrinks into humility, and awe replaces restlessness. From this height, the soul descends gently into the silence of night, carrying with it the peace of the stars. When the mind learns to rise above itself and view life from the vastness of the cosmos, worries lose their weight and the heart settles into proportion. Yet there remains another barrier to rest, one that comes not from thought, but from the body itself. Physical discomfort, aching muscles, a restless back, the pulse of old injuries, or the simple unease of lying awake, these sensations often grow louder at night. The silence of the room amplifies them until they seem unbearable. Many see this as a curse, as an obstacle between them and peace. The Stoics saw it differently. They taught that pain and discomfort, far from being enemies, can be transformed into allies. When reframed with reason, these sensations become opportunities for resilience, training grounds for strength, and reminders of the soul's independence from the body. Epictetus, who lived his life with a crippled leg, never allowed pain to dictate the state of his spirit. He taught that while the body may ache, the mind is free to interpret that ache. Pain itself is only a signal, a sensation. It is the judgment layered upon it. This is unbearable, this is unfair, this is endless, that multiplies suffering. By separating sensation from judgment, one regains power. A restless night is no longer torment, but practice. A throbbing muscle is no longer punishment, but opportunity to exercise courage. This reframing is the essence of Stoic resilience. Pain becomes an ally when seen as training. Just as athletes grow stronger by lifting resistance, the soul grows stronger by enduring discomfort with calm. Seneca wrote that hardship is the forge in which virtue is tested. Without resistance, courage remains unproven. Without challenge, endurance remains weak. At night, when the body complains, the Stoic greets it as a sparring partner rather than an enemy. Each pulse of discomfort becomes a reminder that virtue is alive, waiting to be practiced. This perspective changes the experience entirely. Where most people toss and turn, resenting the body, the Stoic welcomes the moment. Here is my chance to practice patience, they say. Here is my chance to master myself when circumstances test me. In this way, restlessness itself becomes a path to deeper rest, not because the body suddenly feels perfect, but because the mind no longer resists. Resistance fuels agitation. Acceptance dissolves it. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of an empire, endured sickness and fatigue while carrying responsibilities greater than most can fathom. Yet, in his meditations, he wrote of pain as nothing more than an impression on the senses, not something that need touch the mind. He instructed himself to see discomfort as natural, no different than hunger or thirst, a signal from the body, but not a verdict upon the soul. In bed, this perspective quiets the inner protest. Pain is acknowledged, but not exaggerated. It is felt, but not feared. This balance is what allows sleep to come, even when the body does not feel at ease. Another layer of reframing lies in gratitude. Discomfort often draws attention to what is missing. A night of perfect ease, a body free of pain. But when the Stoic considers pain as part of life's fabric, gratitude for what remains grows stronger. If a knee aches, the other still bends with strength. If the back throbs, the breath still flows freely. By focusing on what is intact, discomfort loses its power to dominate the whole. Gratitude shifts attention from absence to presence, and presence invites peace. Discomfort also teaches humility. The strongest person, the wealthiest ruler, the most accomplished scholar, none can escape the frailty of the body. A sleepless night humbles all alike. This shared vulnerability, when accepted, dissolves pride and breeds compassion. If pain is an unavoidable companion for all, then bearing it with grace connects you to the whole human family. Compassion lightens suffering, and in compassion, agitation turns into patience. The Stoics also encouraged voluntary exposure to discomfort, not out of cruelty to themselves, but to prepare for nights such as these. Seneca practiced sleeping on the ground, eating simple meals, wearing rough clothes. By doing so, he proved to himself that comfort was a preference, not a necessity. When genuine discomfort arrived uninvited, he was ready. For those who train themselves this way, an aching back or a restless body at night does not feel like disaster. It feels like a familiar guest, one already welcomed during practice. Modern research supports this Stoic wisdom. Studies in psychology show that reframing pain changes the brain's response to it. When pain is interpreted as threat, stress hormones surge, tension rises, and suffering multiplies. When interpreted as neutral information, the nervous system calms, perception softens, and endurance increases. This is why athletes, monks, and soldiers all train themselves to reinterpret discomfort. What the Stoics practiced as philosophy, modern science confirms as strategy. To apply this at night, one begins with awareness. Instead of fleeing from the sensation, turn toward it. Notice it directly, its location, its rhythm, its intensity. Then separate fact from judgment. This is pressure in my shoulder. This is warmth in my leg. This is nothing more. Next, introduce meaning. Say to yourself, "This is my training. This is my chance to practice endurance. This is how I grow." Finally, add gratitude. "This discomfort sharpens my patience. This pain teaches me humility. This restlessness reminds me of my strength." With this sequence, agitation transforms into discipline, and discipline calms the soul. Discomfort also strengthens presence. When the body aches, the mind is forced into awareness of the now. Most sleeplessness arises from wandering, regret for yesterday, fear of tomorrow. But pain anchors you to this moment. The Stoic uses this anchor not as punishment, but as practice. By staying with sensation without judgment, they cultivate the ability to live fully in the present. Presence is the soil of peace, and peace welcomes rest. There is also freedom in recognizing the limits of discomfort. Few pains are constant. They rise and fall, shift and fade. By observing them carefully, you discover their impermanence. No sensation lasts forever. Even the sharpest ache comes in waves. Recognizing this, you stop believing the story that this will never end. You learn to ride the wave, trusting it will pass. This trust removes desperation, and without desperation, the body relaxes into stillness. Reframing discomfort also strengthens identity. When you learn that pain cannot touch the core of who you are, you grow untouchable. Epictetus often told his students that while the body may be chained, the mind remains free. Pain is part of the body, but you are more than the body. You are the faculty that chooses how to interpret. By reminding yourself of this truth, you separate self from sensation. Pain may visit, but it does not own you. Restlessness may linger, but it cannot define you. Discomfort, when embraced, also makes comfort sweeter. A night of restlessness teaches you to value the nights of ease. An ache makes movement more precious when it is free. This rhythm of contrast sharpens joy. Without resistance, pleasures grow dull. With occasional hardship, pleasures regain their brilliance. The Stoics knew that gratitude for ease requires exposure to difficulty. Thus, even restless nights serve a purpose. They renew appreciation for life's simple gifts. At the deepest level, reframing pain aligns you with nature. The body, by its design, carries both pleasure and discomfort. To reject this truth is to fight reality. To accept it is to live harmoniously with the whole. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that whatever comes by nature is neither intolerable nor unfamiliar. Discomfort, then, is natural, part of the same order that carries the stars across the sky. To align with it is to accept your place in the universe. Acceptance quiets rebellion, and quietness opens the door to sleep. Thus, after lifting the mind to the stars and dissolving anxieties in the vastness of perspective, the Stoic descends into the body itself. There, even pain and restlessness become teachers. By reframing them as allies, the soul transforms agitation into discipline, discomfort into training, and suffering into strength. With this transformation, the night no longer feels hostile. It becomes another arena for virtue, another opportunity to grow, and ultimately another path into the silence of deep rest. When the body's discomfort is reframed as a teacher rather than an enemy, agitation loses its sharpness and rest finds an opening. Yet even when pain has been met with courage and restlessness transformed into patience, the mind itself may still pulse with turbulence. Thoughts accelerate, emotions stir, and the inner world resists quiet. Here, the Stoics direct us to the most basic rhythm of life, the constant companion that remains from birth to death, the breath. They saw breathing not as a mere biological reflex, but as a bridge between body and reason, a living thread that can be brought under the guidance of the ruling faculty, the hegemonikon. At night, when silence is disturbed by inner storms, aligning breath with reason becomes the discipline that dissolves turmoil and carries the soul into stillness. The Stoics understood that the ruling faculty governs all interpretations, choices, and judgments. But they also recognized that the body and mind are not separate kingdoms. They shape one another. Breath sits at the crossroads between the two. It responds to fear with quickness, to anger with sharpness, to peace with steadiness. To take command of the breath is to take indirect command of the passions. It is a discipline accessible at all times, requiring no tools, no words, only attention. This accessibility made it a powerful Stoic exercise, and it remains just as powerful today. To align breathing with rational control begins by noticing its state. When anxiety grips, breath becomes shallow and uneven. When anger rises, breath grows fast and heated. These patterns feed the passions, creating a cycle where body and mind ignite each other. The Stoic interrupts the cycle by deliberately slowing and steadying the breath. In doing so, the body sends signals of calm to the mind, and the ruling faculty regains its strength to govern impressions clearly. Sleep, which depends on the dissolution of turmoil, follows naturally when this cycle is broken. Marcus Aurelius wrote often of returning to oneself, retreating into the inner citadel where reason reigns. Breath is the pathway to that retreat. Each inhalation becomes a reminder of order, each exhalation a release of what is not within control. To breathe with awareness is to practice philosophy in motion. No grand speeches, no complex rituals, only the simple act of breathing as an expression of reason. This simplicity makes it a nightly tool, especially when thoughts resist stillness. The act of rational breathing also trains endurance. Just as the Stoic learns to hold steady under external pressures, the practice of measured breathing teaches steadiness under internal pressure. The body longs to hurry, the mind longs to chase, but the ruling faculty directs otherwise. Stay, it says. Breathe. Each cycle of breath becomes a rehearsal for self-mastery, a lived expression of temperance. In bed, this discipline translates into the ability to remain calm when thoughts tempt agitation, when emotions beg for reaction. There is also a symbolic depth to the breath. The Stoics spoke of pneuma, the breath or spirit that animates all things, binding the universe together. To align personal breathing with reason is to align with the rational order of the cosmos itself. It is a participation in the logos, a harmony between individual life and universal life. This thought alone quiets turmoil, for what can disturb the one who feels their breath moving in rhythm with the universe? Sleep becomes not escape but union, a merging into the greater order. The breath also serves as a practical anchor for presence. Much restlessness at night arises from wandering into yesterday's regrets, into tomorrow's worries. But breath is always now. By directing attention to it, the mind is recalled from wandering to the present moment. This breath now becomes the focal point. With each return, wandering loses strength and stillness grows. Presence, more than solutions, is what prepares the soul for rest. Another gift of rational breathing is its capacity to soften emotion without denial. Fear may arise, anger may stir, sadness may linger. Rather than forcing them away, you breathe with them. Each exhale becomes a release of their intensity, each inhale a drawing in of calm. The ruling faculty remains steady, observing but not enslaved. This balance mirrors the Stoic goal, not the absence of emotion, but freedom from its tyranny. To practice this balance at night is to fall asleep not in suppression, but in harmony. Seneca advised practicing simple disciplines daily to keep the soul strong. Rational breathing is one of the simplest yet most profound. It requires no preparation beyond awareness, yet its effects ripple through body and mind alike. In moments of insomnia, it becomes a tool more powerful than striving to force sleep, for forcing only sharpens tension. Breathing, slow and reasoned, releases effort, and sleep follows effortlessness. Science now confirms what Stoics knew by experience. Slow breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, lowering heart rate and calming the body. Mindful breathing reduces cortisol, the stress hormone, and quiets the amygdala, the brain's alarm system. What philosophy taught as discipline, neuroscience records as biology. When combined, reason and physiology cooperate to dissolve turmoil. The practice unfolds in stages. First, awareness, noticing without judgment the state of your breath. Second, regulation, gently deepening inhalations, extending exhalations, creating steadiness. Third, reflection, pairing each breath with rational reminders. This is under my control, this is not. Fourth, surrender, allowing the rhythm to carry you, no longer forcing, simply flowing. By following this sequence, the ruling faculty directs both body and mind toward calm, and sleep arises without struggle. This discipline also trains resilience beyond the night. A person who learns to master breath in the silence of bed carries that mastery into the noise of day. In arguments, in stress, in pain, they return to breath, steadying themselves, regaining control. Nights of rational breathing prepare days of rational action. The cycle strengthens until body and soul both reflect the Stoic ideal of calm strength. Breath also teaches impermanence. Each inhalation rises, each exhalation falls, never clinging, never resisting. To meditate on this rhythm is to accept the rhythm of life itself, gain and loss, joy and sorrow, birth and death. Each cycle of breath is a rehearsal for letting go, a nightly practice of memento mori. By aligning with this rhythm, fear dissolves, and the soul rests in trust. At its deepest, the discipline of breath reminds us of simplicity. So much turmoil is born of complexity, plans, worries, calculations. Breath cuts through them all. Inhale, exhale. Nothing more is needed. The ruling faculty, grounded in reason, directs this rhythm until the noise fades. Sleep comes not because problems are solved, but because the soul has returned to its simplest harmony. Thus, after converting pain into a teacher and restlessness into training, the Stoic turns to the breath as rational discipline. In the quiet of night, each cycle becomes an act of mastery, an alignment with logos, a calming of turmoil. With breath steady and reason firm, the gates of sleep open not through force but through harmony, and the soul enters rest as a participant in the order of the cosmos itself. When the breath is brought under reason's guidance, turmoil loosens and stillness becomes possible. Yet even in that calm, another hidden source of disturbance often lingers: attachment to wealth, possessions, and material security. The body may be at ease, the breath steady, but the mind can still clutch at fears of loss, envy of others, or the endless desire for more. These thoughts, subtle and heavy, rob many of rest. Seneca, who lived with great fortune yet spoke often of its emptiness, taught that freedom from material anxiety is worth more than any bed of silk or palace chamber. True rest does not come from comfort purchased, but from detachment cultivated. For Seneca, wealth itself was not evil, nor was poverty inherently good. Both belonged to the realm of indifference. What mattered was how one related to them. A person enslaved by possessions, whether rich or poor, is restless. A person free in spirit, whether surrounded by luxury or living with little, is at peace. At night, this truth becomes striking. The one who fears losing fortune lies awake, calculating and protecting, while the one who has let go lies down without chains, regardless of circumstance. Seneca often warned that wealth multiplies worries rather than removes them. The rich, he said, fear thieves, rivals, betrayal and decline. Their sleep is guarded, their rest fragile. The poor, though lacking comfort, are freer in spirit if they accept their condition. To let go of material anxieties is to open the door to sleep, more refreshing than any luxury. This is because rest is not measured in thread count or cushions, but in the absence of fear and the presence of contentment. The anxiety tied to wealth stems from illusion, the illusion of permanence and control. Money, property, possessions all appear stable, yet fortune shifts as quickly as weather. Seneca reminded his readers daily that what can be given can also be taken. To pin your peace to unstable ground is to invite nightly disturbance. But to root peace in virtue, which no thief or misfortune can steal, is to carry security into every bed, rich or poor. The one who knows this sleeps without fear, for nothing essential can be lost. Letting go of material anxieties also strips away envy, one of the greatest thieves of rest. Comparing one's wealth to another's creates a cycle of dissatisfaction. The mind replays what others possess, magnifies what it lacks, and finds no silence. Seneca advised cultivating satisfaction with what is sufficient. Enough is abundance, he taught, when the heart knows how to measure wisely. To practice this before sleep is to free the mind from comparison, to close the day in gratitude rather than longing. Gratitude settles the soul, longing disturbs it. There is also freedom in simplicity. Seneca praised voluntary poverty as practice, encouraging his students to live occasionally with the bare minimum. By sleeping on the ground, wearing simple clothing, eating plain food, they discovered that life remained bearable and even peaceful without luxury. Such practice removed fear, because the worst loss was already rehearsed. If one can rest on straw with ease, a fine bed becomes a bonus rather than a necessity. Fear of losing comfort fades, and with fear gone, rest deepens. Wealth, when clung to, breeds a false sense of importance. People tie their identity to possessions and status, and in doing so, they create fragile egos that tremble at every shift of fortune. Seneca's wisdom cuts through this fragility. He reminded his readers that the value of a person lies in character, not in property. At night, when masks fall away, this truth matters most. Character lies down with you. Possessions remain outside. The one who values character over wealth enters sleep in dignity, while the one who measures worth by riches is haunted by insecurity. Seneca also connected wealth to desire's endless hunger. Riches, he said, do not end desire, but feed it, like pouring water into a leaking vessel. Desire for more is the deepest restlessness because it has no boundary. At night, this desire becomes agitation, calculating profits, planning acquisitions, fearing competition. To quiet this hunger is to close the vessel, to recognize sufficiency. Sleep then flows naturally, for the mind no longer chases what it lacks, but rests in what it already holds. There is another danger in wealth, the illusion that it can purchase peace. Many believe that comfort, security systems, fine foods and servants will guarantee rest. Seneca, observing the elite of Rome, knew otherwise. Palaces were filled with sleepless men and women, restless despite abundance. Peace, he argued, cannot be bought because it is not external. It is a discipline of the soul. To let go of material anxieties is to acknowledge this truth. Peace is an inner possession, wealth only an outer decoration. Modern psychology mirrors this insight. Studies show that beyond a certain point of material security, additional wealth does not increase happiness and often fuels anxiety. The endless pursuit of more creates stress, not calm. Seneca's philosophy anticipated this finding centuries ago. True wealth lies in freedom from want, not accumulation of possessions. The one who practices this sleeps soundly, whether in a palace or a cottage. To apply Seneca's wisdom at night, reflection is essential. Ask yourself, what of today's stress is tied to possessions? Is fear of losing money haunting me? Is comparison to others' fortune disturbing my rest? Is desire for more stirring dissatisfaction? Write them down, name them, and then remind yourself, these belong to indifference. They touch neither virtue nor the core of who I am. By naming and reframing them, you free the mind from their grasp, clearing the way for rest. Seneca often spoke of fortune as a mistress not to be trusted. She gives with one hand and takes with the other. To tie your peace to her is to live enslaved. But the wise one treats her gifts lightly, enjoying them when present, releasing them without grief when gone. To internalize this attitude is to remove wealth's power to disturb the night. Rest no longer depends on fortune's whims, but on reason's stability. This philosophy also invites joy in simplicity. When material anxieties are set aside, small things shine brighter. The cool air of night, the weight of a blanket, the rhythm of breath. These require no riches to enjoy. In fact, riches often dull them by overshadowing simple pleasures with endless appetite. Seneca urged his readers to rediscover joy in what is natural and close at hand. To go to bed content with little is to sleep with richness beyond gold. The discipline of letting go also strengthens courage. If you no longer fear losing wealth, then fortune holds no power over you. Without this fear, your mind does not guard or calculate in the dark hours. You enter sleep unarmed, trusting that what truly matters, virtue, cannot be touched by loss. This courage is the deepest form of security, and security is the soil of peace. Wealth may decorate the body's rest, but it cannot touch the soul's rest. Seneca knew this, and he lived to remind others of it. By detaching from material anxieties, by embracing sufficiency, by practicing simplicity, the soul finds a bed softer than luxury could ever provide. Sleep becomes not a fragile possession to be bought, but a natural return to harmony, available to anyone who learns to let go. Thus, after mastering breath as rational discipline, the Stoic turns to the next layer of unrest, the illusions tied to wealth. By applying Seneca's wisdom, possessions are reclassified as indifferent, desires are calmed, envy dissolves, and gratitude returns. In that clarity, the night no longer belongs to fortune, but to you. And with that freedom, the soul sinks into a rest richer than any treasure chest, a sleep more luxurious than the finest bed. Letting go of material anxieties reveals a truth deeper than gold. The richest sleep belongs not to those with abundance, but to those with freedom. Yet even freedom from possessions does not guarantee peace if the conscience is unsettled. A mind troubled by dishonesty, cowardice, selfishness, or excess cannot easily close its eyes, no matter how soft the bed. The Stoics taught that rest flows most naturally from a life aligned with virtue. To meditate on virtue before sleep is to cleanse the heart of agitation, to measure the day not by fortune's gifts, but by the progress made in justice, courage, wisdom, and temperance. In this nightly reflection, the conscience becomes clear, and clarity opens the gates of rest. For the Stoics, virtue was the only true good. All else, wealth, pleasure, health, reputation, were secondary, indifferent in value unless guided by virtue. To focus on virtue at the close of day is to return to what matters most. It is a practice of aligning the soul with its highest purpose, ensuring that the night begins not in distraction, but in harmony. When the conscience is anchored in virtue, sleep comes not as escape, but as continuation of order. Justice, the first pillar, governs how we treat others. Reflecting on justice at night means asking, did I act fairly today? Did I respect the dignity of others? Did I give what was due without selfishness? Such reflection removes regret before it festers. If injustice was done, recognition opens the path to correction tomorrow. If justice was practiced, gratitude deepens. Either way, the mind rests, knowing it has faced truth honestly. Courage, the second pillar, asks whether fear dictated the day. Did I avoid what was right because of discomfort? Did I shrink from duty when challenge arose? Nighttime meditation on courage does not condemn but clarifies. Where fear won, resolve is planted. Where courage prevailed, encouragement is renewed. The soul finds calm because nothing is hidden. All is laid bare and met with resolve. Fear loses strength when acknowledged directly, and courage once named strengthens its roots. Wisdom, the third pillar, is the lens through which choices are made. Reflecting on wisdom means considering whether reason guided decisions or whether impulse and passion ruled. Did I act thoughtfully, or did I rush? Did I see clearly, or was I blinded by anger or desire? This reflection organizes the mind, turning confusion into lessons. Even mistakes become teachers when filtered through wisdom. The mind, having learned, no longer loops in regret. It settles, prepared for renewal. Temperance, the fourth pillar, measures balance. Did I indulge excessively in pleasure or comfort? Did I restrain myself where restraint was needed? Did I practice moderation in speech, action, and thought? By reviewing temperance at night, the soul ensures that desire has not left it unbalanced. Recognition of excess creates humility. Recognition of restraint brings quiet confidence. Both clear the conscience. Balance invites peace, and peace invites rest. Meditating on these four virtues transforms the night into a moral sanctuary. Instead of drifting into sleep with scattered thoughts, the soul engages in deliberate reflection. This reflection purifies, not through perfection, but through honesty. A conscience aligned with virtue does not demand flawlessness. It demands sincerity. When you know you have faced your actions truthfully, sleep becomes easier. Guilt no longer lingers in the shadows, and anxiety no longer feeds on denial. Marcus Aurelius used this very method, writing nightly notes to himself, examining whether he lived according to reason and virtue. His reflections were not for display, but for cleansing. By recording his struggles with anger, pride, and distraction, he lightened their weight. This practice shows that even emperors found rest not in luxury, but in moral alignment. The same holds true for all. A conscience examined is a conscience at peace. This practice also deepens identity. When you measure the day by virtue, you stop defining yourself by success or failure in external terms. Did you earn wealth, gain praise, or avoid hardship? These become secondary. The primary measure is moral growth. This shift creates security because external measures fluctuate, but virtue is always within your reach. At night, this security translates into calmness. You rest not because the world approved, but because you lived true to your principles. Another fruit of meditating on virtue is resilience. By reviewing daily progress, you strengthen commitment to growth. Each day becomes part of a continuous path. Failures are no longer reasons for despair, but steps in training. Successes are no longer occasions for pride, but reminders to continue. This perspective removes the agitation of highs and lows, replacing them with steady movement. The mind, assured of progress, rests with confidence. This discipline also strengthens humility. By acknowledging failures in virtue, you confront the truth of human imperfection. Humility softens the ego, and a softened ego is less disturbed by anxiety. At the same time, acknowledging progress prevents despair. The balance of humility and encouragement clears the conscience of extremes, allowing sleep to arise from moderation. Meditating on virtue also invites gratitude. When you recognize moments of justice, courage, wisdom, or temperance, however small, you feel thankful for growth. Gratitude for progress, even imperfect, replaces dissatisfaction. A grateful soul does not toss with restlessness. It lies down content, knowing it moved closer to its ideal. This practice aligns with modern psychology as well. Reflection on values before sleep reduces stress and improves well-being, studies show. By focusing on what truly matters, people experience less rumination and more peace. What Stoics practiced as philosophy, research confirms as therapy. Reflection on virtue reduces turmoil by anchoring the mind in enduring values. To apply this practice, one may silently review the day, asking in simple words, where was I just? Where was I unjust? Where did I show courage? Where did I shrink? Where was I wise? Where was I unwise? Where was I balanced? Where did I indulge? The answers, written or spoken inwardly, become a nightly exam of virtue, no judgment, only truth and resolve. With this, the conscience clears and the heart softens. The power of this reflection lies in continuity. A single night may not transform, but nightly practice accumulates. Over weeks and months, conscience becomes lighter, character stronger, rest deeper. The night becomes not only a pause but a workshop of the soul, shaping the next day through reflection. Virtue, unlike wealth, cannot be stolen. Unlike comfort, it does not decay. Unlike fortune, it does not shift with chance. It remains within your grasp, always. To meditate on virtue before sleep is to remind yourself of this eternal possession. With this knowledge, fear subsides, anxiety dissolves, and peace grows. Sleep becomes not an accident, but the natural companion of a virtuous conscience. Thus, after learning from Seneca that wealth cannot guarantee peace, the Stoic turns inward to the only true treasure, virtue. By reflecting on justice, courage, wisdom, and temperance each night, the soul clears itself of guilt, anchors itself in progress, and prepares itself for rest. This is why meditating on virtue before sleep is not merely reflection. It is a discipline of freedom, the surest path to a calm conscience, and the deepest rest a human being can know. When the conscience has been measured against virtue and found to be honest, the mind releases much of the weight that keeps people awake. Yet, even when the heart is calm, sleep sometimes refuses to arrive. The body rests, but the eyes remain open, caught between fatigue and alertness. Thoughts creep back in, whispering about tomorrow's demands or replaying today's mistakes. This is where Epictetus offers his most practical gift, the dichotomy of control. By separating what belongs to us from what does not, wakefulness itself can be transformed from torment into training. Insomnia becomes less of a curse and more of an exercise in freedom. The dichotomy of control is the cornerstone of Stoic discipline. Epictetus taught that some things are within our power, our judgments, our choices, our intentions, and some are not. Our bodies, our possessions, the opinions of others, the turns of fortune. Confusion arises when we mix these categories, when we spend our energy trying to command what lies outside us while neglecting what lies within. At night, this confusion fuels insomnia. The mind chases what cannot be controlled, pulling the soul into endless struggle. The way out is simple but profound. Redirect attention to what is ours, release what is not. When lying awake, thoughts often swarm around future outcomes. Will I succeed tomorrow? Will others approve? Will misfortune strike? Each of these lies outside our power. To hold them tightly is to guarantee unrest. Epictetus would instruct his students to say, "This belongs to fate, not to me." By naming thoughts in this way, you strip them of false urgency. The mind, once tangled in worry, begins to untangle. Energy is no longer wasted on the uncontrollable. What remains is focus on what can be governed. The attitude you bring, the calmness you practice, the reason you preserve. This shift transforms insomnia into a stage for mastery. Wakefulness no longer means defeat, but an opportunity to rehearse the Stoic art of control. Each intrusive thought becomes a test. Does this belong to me or not? If not, it is released. If yes, it is shaped with reason. For example, the thought, "I must give a speech tomorrow," contains both elements. The reaction of the audience lies outside control, but preparation, courage, clarity, these belong to you. By sorting them, the mind reclaims agency. Anxiety dissolves because clarity replaces confusion. Epictetus himself lived under severe constraints as a slave and later as a teacher exiled from Rome. Yet he insisted that true freedom lies in the proper use of the mind. Chains may bind the body, but no one can compel the ruling faculty. Applying this truth to sleeplessness means recognizing that wakefulness itself is outside your control. You cannot force sleep, but you can govern your response to wakefulness. You can choose whether to resist with frustration or to accept with discipline. The moment you stop demanding sleep and start practicing freedom, the torment eases. Rest, even if not immediate sleep, becomes possible. There is a hidden irony. Often it is the desperate attempt to sleep that keeps us awake. The more you fight for it, the further it drifts. Epictetus's dichotomy breaks this cycle. Sleep itself is not within your command, but how you use wakefulness is. You may use it to spiral in anxiety, or you may use it to strengthen reason. By choosing the latter, the night becomes meaningful rather than wasted. And often, once resistance is dropped, sleep arrives naturally as a byproduct of acceptance. This practice also reshapes the relationship with time. Insomnia feels unbearable because the mind obsesses over lost hours. If I do not sleep now, tomorrow will be ruined. Yet time itself is not controllable. You cannot retrieve lost minutes or guarantee future ones. What you can control is how you meet the present. If the present moment is wakefulness, meet it with calm rather than panic. By doing so, you remove the double burden, both lack of sleep and agitation about lack of sleep. What remains is simple wakefulness, which is far lighter to carry. The dichotomy of control also invites gratitude in unexpected places. While awake, you can reflect on what belongs fully to you, your ability to reason, to choose, to care, to reflect. These are possessions untouched by fate. To focus on them is to rediscover wealth in the soul. Even if the body does not sleep, the soul is strengthened. Gratitude for what remains within your grasp replaces despair over what lies beyond it. This shift turns insomnia into a quiet workshop of resilience. There is also humility in this practice. By acknowledging what you cannot control, you admit the limits of human power. Sleep belongs to nature, not to command. Fortune belongs to time, not to demand. This humility softens the ego, which often resists these truths with agitation. Once humility is embraced, the night becomes less of a battlefield. You no longer stand against the flow of nature, but flow with it, resting even when the body is still awake. Sorting thoughts through the dichotomy of control also sharpens clarity. When lying awake, the mind often feels chaotic because it treats every thought as equally urgent. By categorizing them, order returns. This belongs to me. This does not. The act itself creates structure, which soothes the restless mind. Structure breeds calm, and calm invites sleep. Even when sleep does not come immediately, order itself feels restful compared to chaos. Modern cognitive psychology reflects this same wisdom. Techniques for insomnia often include identifying unhelpful thoughts and reframing them. Epictetus anticipated this by centuries. His method is not merely therapeutic, but philosophical, grounding rest in a worldview. For him, the key was not positive thinking, but accurate thinking, seeing clearly what belongs to us and what does not. Accuracy brings peace, because confusion is the true source of turmoil. This practice also strengthens courage for the following day. Many lie awake fearing tomorrow. But by applying the dichotomy, you recognize that tomorrow's external events are not yours. Only your response belongs to you. This realization arms you with confidence. You rise not with exhaustion, but with the clarity that nothing essential lies outside your grasp. This clarity itself restores strength, even when sleep was imperfect. At its heart, the dichotomy of control turns sleepless nights into companions rather than enemies. Wakefulness becomes a teacher, training the soul to release illusions and cling only to what is truly yours. The mind learns that peace does not depend on perfect conditions, but on proper judgment. This truth, once grasped, dissolves the fear of insomnia itself. Without fear, sleep often returns. And even when it does not, rest remains within reach. Thus, after meditating on virtue to clear the conscience, the Stoic turns to Epictetus' discipline to face wakefulness directly. By sorting thoughts into what can and cannot be controlled, the soul transforms insomnia from torment into training. The ruling faculty remains sovereign, calm grows, and in that calm, either sleep or a deeper form of rest is found. When wakefulness is met with Epictetus's teaching, the mind learns to sort and release, holding only what belongs within its power. Yet even with clarity restored, there remains the challenge of the world itself. Noise, disorder, conflict, and the constant changes of fortune press against us, often seeping into the night. The Stoics prepared for this not by withdrawing from life, but by building an inner citadel, a fortress of reason and strength that no chaos could penetrate. To prepare this citadel before sleep is to enter the night with a mind unshaken, carrying serenity even into dreams. The idea of the inner citadel was central to Marcus Aurelius. Surrounded by wars, politics, betrayal and illness, he reminded himself that within his soul stood a place untouched by the turmoil of the outer world. This space, protected by reason, was unassailable. It required no stone walls, no soldiers, no weapons. Its defense was discipline. Its foundation was virtue. Its walls were clarity. To cultivate this fortress each night is to guarantee that no disturbance, whether from outside events or from restless thoughts, can shake the core of who you are. Preparing the citadel begins with withdrawal into stillness. Not withdrawal from duty or from people, but withdrawal into the ruling faculty, the part of the mind that observes and judges. Marcus wrote that people seek retreats in the countryside or by the sea, but the philosopher can retreat into the self at any moment. At night, this retreat is vital. You close the doors of the senses, you draw inward, and you remember that your true security lies within, not in external calm. Even if the world outside is noisy, your citadel can be silent. Even if fortune turns harsh, your citadel can remain steady. The citadel is constructed by daily practice. Each act of reflection, each moment of restraint, each instance of courage adds a stone to its walls. By evening, you can enter this space not as a stranger, but as its builder. When thoughts threaten to intrude, you remind yourself that they knock at the gates, but cannot enter unless allowed. This visualization itself strengthens serenity. You feel the walls firm around you, unshaken by what presses outside. Sleep in this state is no longer fragile. It is carried by the fortress you have prepared. A fortress is not built by denial, but by recognition. To deny the existence of hardship is to leave the walls thin. To recognize it and prepare inwardly is to strengthen the defenses. Marcus Aurelius knew war, betrayal, and disease, yet he also knew that his response, shaped by reason, remained untouched. This recognition allowed him to rest amid turmoil. For you, the same holds true. The day may bring insult, pressure, or failure, but in the citadel they lose power. They exist outside the walls, unable to disturb the ruling faculty unless invited. Another element of preparing the citadel is remembering what cannot be taken. External goods may vanish, health may decline, relationships may change, but your ability to act with justice, courage, wisdom, and temperance remains. These are the treasures stored within the citadel, safe from fortune's theft. To reflect on them before sleep is to remind yourself that you are not impoverished by loss, not shaken by circumstance. Your wealth lies in virtue, and virtue cannot be stolen. With this knowledge, the night feels secure, for nothing essential can be threatened. The citadel also shields against the subtle invasion of resentment. Resentment often grows in the quiet hours, replaying slights and injuries. But when the fortress is prepared, these thoughts are recognized as enemies at the gate. They shout, but they cannot enter unless the ruling faculty lowers the drawbridge. By keeping the gates closed, you protect serenity. The night remains peaceful, free of the bitterness that robs rest. This fortress is not isolation, but clarity. Within it, you are not cut off from others, but freed from dependence on their opinions. Approval or disapproval, praise or blame, all remain outside. In the citadel, you measure yourself by virtue alone. This independence dissolves the agitation that comes from living for others' judgments. At night, you rest because your worth is secure, not because others affirm it. The practice of building this fortress also strengthens resilience. Life's chaos may continue, but your core remains unshaken. This steadiness carries into dreams themselves. Sleep often reflects the state of waking life. A restless mind breeds restless dreams, but a fortified mind breeds calm ones. By preparing the citadel, you shape not only how you fall asleep, but how your subconscious processes the night. Even in dreams, the fortress holds. This preparation also invites a sense of dignity. To enter sleep as a builder of the citadel is to enter with honor, not as one defeated by the day. No matter what fortune brought, you know you responded with discipline, or at least with the resolve to improve tomorrow. This dignity replaces self-reproach with quiet confidence. Confidence calms the heart, and calmness welcomes sleep. The citadel is also a place of renewal. Just as physical rest repairs the body, the inner retreat repairs the soul. By entering it at night, you allow the mind to release the debris of the day and restore itself. You leave behind external chaos and return to the core where simplicity reigns. In this simplicity, rest is not forced but natural. The construction of the citadel is lifelong, but each night offers a chance to strengthen it. Reflection, gratitude, clarity, and discipline are its stones. Over time, the walls grow higher, the defenses firmer. Eventually, nothing outside can disturb the peace within. At that point, sleep ceases to be fragile. It becomes the natural companion of an unshakable soul. Thus, after learning to redirect thoughts through Epictetus's dichotomy of control, the Stoic goes further, constructing a fortress that cannot be breached. By preparing the inner citadel each night, the soul ensures serenity despite outer chaos, carrying that serenity even into dreams. In this fortress, rest is not stolen by noise or fate, but safeguarded by reason, the strongest defense a human being can build. When the inner citadel has been built, and its walls hold firm against the chaos of the world, the soul enters the night with a rare steadiness. Yet the Stoics did not see rest only as refuge. They saw it as rehearsal. Sleep was not an empty pause, but a preparation, a hidden stage on which the mind could ready itself for the trials of the next day. To approach sleep as ethical training is to transform the act of lying down into something greater, a deliberate practice for becoming more just, more courageous, more wise, and more temperate when morning comes. In this way, the night is not wasted time, but purposeful preparation for virtue. For the Stoics, every part of life was an opportunity to live in accordance with reason. Sleep, though silent and unconscious, was no exception. Seneca wrote that how one ends the day shapes how one begins the next. By treating rest as rehearsal, the mind is trained to carry clarity forward. This perspective dissolves the common frustration of viewing sleep as merely lost hours. Instead, it becomes investment, an invisible workshop where character is strengthened and virtue is sharpened. Approaching sleep this way changes the intention behind it. Most people lie down seeking escape from work, from stress, from thought. But the Stoic lies down seeking readiness. Rest becomes part of duty, not departure from it. The body is restored not for comfort's sake, but for the sake of justice, so that tomorrow one can meet others with fairness. The mind is calmed not for luxury, but for the sake of courage, so that fear will not dictate action. Every breath taken in the night becomes part of the training for virtue. This view also alters how one handles insomnia. Instead of seeing wakefulness as wasted, it becomes a chance to practice patience. If sleep is delayed, the soul still rehearses virtue by refusing to fall into irritation. Even the inability to rest becomes material for training. The dichotomy of control meets this view here. Sleep itself is not in your power, but how you meet the night is. Meeting it with patience, gratitude, and resolve is rehearsal enough. Thus, even a restless night can become purposeful. By viewing sleep as training, one also redefines what success means in rest. Success is not measured in hours of unconsciousness, but in the quality of readiness produced. Did the night strengthen the soul's discipline? Did it provide renewal for tomorrow's duty? If so, the purpose of sleep is fulfilled, whether or not it matched conventional standards. This reframing removes the anxiety that often surrounds rest. Worrying about enough sleep is replaced with trust in preparation. Whatever amount comes is used, because the soul remains committed to virtue regardless. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that he rose from bed not to indulge in ease, but to fulfill his role in the universe. For him, sleep was never indulgence, but replenishment for service. To prepare for this service, he encouraged himself to view even dreams as potential teachers. Whether pleasant or troubling, dreams revealed the state of the mind, offering material for reflection in the morning. This attitude turned the night into a seamless part of philosophy rather than a break from it. The ethical view of sleep also cultivates gratitude. Each night becomes a gift of renewal, not a given. Reflecting on this before bed strengthens humility. Tomorrow is not promised. Tonight's rest may be the last. To approach it as rehearsal for virtue means entering it with reverence. Gratitude eases anxiety, for the heart recognizes that each breath in the night is already abundance. Gratitude itself is training for virtue, sharpening the ability to recognize blessings rather than focusing on lacks. Another effect of this perspective is temperance. If sleep is rehearsal, then indulgence in excess, whether overeating, overdrinking, or overstimulating, becomes foolish, for it harms tomorrow's readiness. By reminding oneself that the night prepares the soul for duty, one naturally restrains harmful habits. Moderation ceases to be restriction and becomes empowerment. The thought, "I must be ready for tomorrow's challenges," strengthens the will to choose wisely. Thus, even preparation for sleep becomes part of ethical training. This approach also deepens courage. To see sleep as rehearsal is to acknowledge that tomorrow will bring trials, uncertainties, and possibly hardships. By resting with the intention of facing them, you prepare the heart not to shrink when they arrive. This readiness reduces dread. Fear of tomorrow dissolves when you know the night is preparing you to meet it with strength. Courage is planted in the evening and carried into the day. The Stoics also valued consistency, and treating sleep as rehearsal ensures continuity between night and day. The same principles that govern waking life, justice, courage, wisdom, temperance, extend into the act of rest. There is no gap where philosophy is absent. This continuity creates harmony within the soul, a sense that every moment contributes to the same purpose. Harmony breeds peace, and peace allows for deeper, more restorative sleep. Practical exercises can embody this view. Before bed, one may recall the day's actions and identify where virtue was practiced and where it faltered. The commitment is then made. Tomorrow, I will strive again. This transforms reflection into rehearsal. Another exercise is to visualize meeting tomorrow's duties with virtue, speaking truth even when difficult, showing patience under pressure, acting with fairness in conflict. Such rehearsal in the mind prepares the soul to embody it in action. When carried into dreams, these images become seeds planted in the subconscious. Even bodily rest becomes part of the rehearsal. Muscles relax, not for indulgence but for strength, so they may serve duties in the morning. Breathing deepens not for pleasure, but for clarity, so the mind may remain sharp. Every physical aspect of sleep aligns with ethical purpose. This alignment removes guilt about resting, because rest itself becomes part of duty. There is no laziness in sleep when it is undertaken as preparation for virtue. The ethical framing of sleep also strengthens resilience against fortune. If tomorrow brings fortune's gifts, the soul uses them wisely. If it brings hardship, the soul endures. Either way, the night has prepared for both. This balance reduces dependence on outcomes. The soul rises ready for anything, because its preparation was not for specific events, but for the cultivation of virtue itself. At the deepest level, viewing sleep as rehearsal transforms existence into unity. Day and night no longer stand opposed, but flow together in the training of the soul. Each morning becomes the continuation of the night's practice, and each night becomes the preparation for the next day's duty. Life itself becomes seamless discipline. The soul ceases to divide time into useful and useless, waking and sleeping, for all serves the same purpose, the pursuit of virtue. Thus, after securing the inner citadel against outer chaos, the Stoic extends discipline into the very act of rest. Sleep ceases to be escape or indulgence. It becomes ethical rehearsal, purposeful preparation for tomorrow's trials. Justice, courage, wisdom, and temperance are not only practiced in daylight, but strengthened in the silence of night. In this way, rest becomes not an interruption, but the hidden forge of virtue, shaping the soul to rise each morning, ready to meet life with strength and serenity. When rest is seen as rehearsal for virtue, the night gains meaning and direction. Yet even with purpose clear, the soul can still be disturbed by the subtle pull of desire. Cravings creep in. One more glance at a screen, one more indulgence in food or drink, one more restless chase for stimulation. These attachments, though small, scatter the mind and make stillness harder to reach. The Stoics warned often against such excess, teaching that peace comes not from multiplication of pleasures, but from their reduction. To practice minimalism of desire in the evening is to prepare the body and soul for rest by loosening the grip of unnecessary wants. The Stoic view of desire was not that it must be destroyed entirely, but that it must be disciplined. Seneca reminded his readers that it is not poverty that makes us restless, but the endless hunger for more. Marcus Aurelius echoed this truth, writing that the contented life is one aligned with nature. free from the chains of craving. At night, this philosophy becomes practical. The fewer wants entertained, the quieter the soul. The evening, if filled with stimulation and indulgence, continues the day's noise. But if desires are softened, the transition into sleep becomes natural, gentle, and restorative. Desire agitates because it is endless. One craving satisfied breeds another, leaving the heart restless. At night, this restlessness manifests as agitation, the mind thinking of what it lacks, the body stirred by what it consumed in excess. To counter this, the Stoic practices reduction. Instead of seeking stimulation, they seek quiet. Instead of feeding desire, they question it. Do I need this, or do I only crave it? This question itself dissolves many urges. With each unnecessary want released, the mind draws closer to peace. Minimalism of desire begins with the body. Food, drink, and physical indulgence weigh heavily on rest. Seneca observed that gluttony leads to troubled sleep, while moderation ensures lightness of body and mind. The evening meal, when kept simple, becomes preparation for peace rather than disturbance. To stop eating before fullness is to grant the body freedom from strain. To avoid indulgence in late stimulants is to respect the natural rhythm of rest. In this way, temperance becomes the ally of sleep. But desire is not only physical. Mental cravings often disturb the night more than bodily ones. The need for constant distraction, the pull of entertainment, the compulsion to check news or messages keeps the mind in agitation. The Stoic resists not through denial, but through discipline. Marcus Aurelius advised himself to stop wandering, to return to simplicity, to focus on what is essential. In the evening, this means closing the door to unnecessary noise, choosing stillness over stimulation. This discipline may feel difficult at first, but its reward is deep quiet that no screen or distraction can provide. Another layer of minimalism lies in possessions. Many enter the night thinking of what they lack, worrying over finances or longing for acquisitions. Seneca mocked this pursuit, pointing out that wealth only multiplies desire instead of ending it. To free oneself from such thoughts at night is to remind the mind that possessions are indifferent, incapable of touching virtue. The soul that rests in sufficiency rests more easily than the one that longs for abundance. Gratitude replaces craving, and gratitude is the sweetest sedative. Minimalism of desire also protects against regret. Many evenings are disturbed by reflection on indulgences of the day. Too much spent, too much consumed, too much wasted. By practicing restraint in the evening itself, the cycle of regret is broken. The night becomes not a time of guilt, but of renewal. Restraint leaves no residue. Excess always does. By remembering this truth, the Stoic chooses moderation, securing a conscience free of agitation. The reduction of desire also fosters presence. Cravings pull the mind outward into what is not yet here, but minimalism draws the mind inward to the present moment. The quiet of the room, the rhythm of breath, the simplicity of being alive, these are sufficient. This sufficiency dissolves the chase for more. Sleep requires presence, not pursuit, and minimalism clears the way for it. Voluntary simplicity, practiced consistently, strengthens resilience. By training the body and soul to rest content with little, one becomes unafraid of loss. If you can find peace in simplicity, fortune's gifts become irrelevant. They may come or go, but your rest is untouched. This security is greater than any luxury, for it cannot be stolen. At night, This resilience translates into confidence. You sleep knowing you can endure without excess. Fear of scarcity no longer haunts you. There is also dignity in restraint. To master desire is to show that reason governs, not impulse. Each evening of moderation strengthens the ruling faculty. The body may clamor for indulgence, but the mind says no, not because it rejects pleasure, but because it values peace more. This dignity nourishes self-respect. A person who respects themselves rests more easily than one who despises their own weakness. Thus, each act of restraint adds not only to health, but to moral strength. Minimalism of desire also has a spiritual dimension. The Stoics saw alignment with nature as the highest good. Nature provides sufficiency, air to breathe, food to sustain, rest to renew. Cravings beyond this are artificial, created by culture, habit, or ego. To strip them away is to return to harmony with nature. In harmony, there is no tension, and without tension, sleep arises naturally. Modern science reflects this wisdom. Research shows that overstimulation before bed, screens, heavy meals, excess alcohol, disrupts sleep cycles. Simplicity, by contrast, improves rest. What Stoics prescribed as philosophy, science confirms as physiology. The alignment of body and mind in moderation prepares the nervous system for calm. To practice minimalism of desire in the evening, begin with awareness. Notice each craving as it arises. Ask whether it is necessary or merely habitual, then choose reduction. Eat lightly, set aside distractions, turn away from unnecessary wants. Replace them with stillness, reflection, and gratitude. Over time, the pattern reshapes the soul. Nights become quieter, mornings clearer, rest deeper. This practice also prepares for death, which the Stoics often contemplated. To strip away desires at night is to rehearse the ultimate stripping away. Each evening becomes a memento mori, a reminder that nothing external is necessary for peace. This reminder strengthens courage and dissolves fear. Fear, once dissolved, no longer robs sleep. Thus, after treating sleep as rehearsal for virtue, the Stoic extends discipline into desire itself. By reducing stimulation, curbing cravings, and embracing simplicity, the night becomes not a battleground of wants, but a sanctuary of sufficiency. In this sanctuary, rest flows freely, unchained from excess, guided by moderation, and anchored in the wisdom that peace belongs not to the one who has more, but to the one who needs less. When desire is tamed and the evening grows simple, the soul is less burdened by cravings and more open to quiet. Yet even in simplicity, the mind can still be troubled by irritations, the small slights, the daily frustrations, the endless minor complaints that linger after the day has ended. These can gnaw at the spirit more than great struggles, keeping the heart restless and the body uneasy. The Stoics offered a remedy deeper than silence or distraction: contemplation of mortality. By remembering the certainty of death, not as a morbid exercise, but as a liberating truth, all petty disturbances lose their hold. At dusk, when the world grows dim, reflecting on mortality transforms sleep into a nightly peace, a rehearsal for the final rest. Memento mori, the reminder that you must die, was not meant to terrify, but to clarify. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that every day might be his last, and that each action, thought, and word should be worthy of that awareness. Seneca urged his readers to treat each evening as if it might close the book of life, so that nothing remained undone or unspoken. This was not despair, but freedom. When death is remembered, the irritation of a rude remark, the weight of an unfinished task, or the frustration of lost opportunity shrinks into proportion. They are revealed as small, passing details in a life that itself is brief. The mind, freed from their grip, becomes still. Contemplating mortality at dusk gives the day closure. Without this reflection, the mind clings to grievances, replaying them endlessly in bed. But when you remind yourself that life is finite, the urgency to hold on fades. The sharpness of irritation softens in the face of impermanence. What is the worth of anger when tomorrow may never come? What is the point of resentment when both you and your opponent are mortal, destined to vanish into the same earth? Such thoughts dissolve hostility, leaving space for calm. This practice also strengthens gratitude. To reflect on death is to see life more clearly. Each breath becomes more precious when you remember it will one day end. Each encounter becomes more valuable when you realize it may be the last. At night, this awareness transforms irritation into appreciation. The day, however flawed, becomes a gift complete in itself. Gratitude replaces restlessness, and gratitude is fertile ground for deep sleep. Another fruit of this reflection is courage. Much anxiety at night arises from fear of the future, fear of what might happen, fear of what might be lost. But when you meditate on mortality, you face the ultimate loss directly. You recognize that death is not an enemy to be avoided forever, but a natural end shared by all. With this acceptance, smaller fears lose their teeth. If the greatest inevitability can be met with calm, how much easier it is to release minor anxieties. Courage steadies the heart, and steadiness opens the door to rest. Seneca wrote that death is not in the future, but already happening, for each day past is a day subtracted from life. This thought, though stark, has a calming effect. By acknowledging the constant presence of mortality, you are less likely to waste energy on trivial matters. At dusk, this means releasing the endless inner chatter. Sleep then becomes not a troubled interruption, but a conscious pause in the rhythm of life's decline, a peaceful step in the ongoing rehearsal for the final silence. Contemplation of death also aligns the soul with justice. When you know time is limited, cruelty and resentment lose appeal. The urge to retaliate or cling to anger seems absurd when both parties will soon vanish. The practice of forgiveness grows easier because mortality reminds you that reconciliation matters more than victory. At night, this perspective ensures that grudges do not follow you into dreams. Instead, forgiveness softens the mind, clearing it for peace. This reflection also sharpens presence. Many people lose sleep because their minds wander into tomorrow or linger in yesterday. But death awareness draws the soul into now. The future is uncertain, the past gone, but this moment, this breath, this closing of the eyes is real. To sink into it fully is to find peace. Mortality is the ultimate teacher of presence, and presence is the soil of sleep. The practice of memento mori was not meant to produce despair, but to teach sufficiency. If tonight were the last, what would you need? Not wealth, not glory, not endless distractions. Only a calm conscience, a grateful heart, and a soul prepared for silence. Remembering death reduces excess, strips away illusion, and reveals what truly matters. With this clarity, the body relaxes and the mind surrenders. because nothing urgent remains undone. Modern psychology supports this Stoic wisdom. Research shows that confronting mortality often leads to increased appreciation of life, stronger relationships, and reduced anxiety. Avoidance of death, by contrast, breeds restlessness and denial. What the Stoics practiced as philosophy, science observes as truth. Reflection on mortality sharpens meaning and deepens calm. At night, this reflection becomes practical medicine, dissolving irritations and fears that otherwise keep people awake. To apply this practice, one may begin by recalling the brevity of life. Think of how many generations have already come and gone, how many names are forgotten, how many struggles dissolved into dust. Place today's concerns against this backdrop. Ask, does this irritation matter in the face of mortality? If tomorrow does not come, would this worry still deserve attention? The answers quiet the mind. Another exercise is to recall personal finitude. Remind yourself that tonight may be the last chance to express gratitude, to forgive, to rest with dignity. This thought does not produce panic, but priority. It shifts attention away from trivialities and toward essentials. Sleep then arrives not as escape, but as fulfillment, because the day has been closed with awareness. Even the act of lying down can be framed as a rehearsal for death. Marcus Aurelius often compared sleep to a temporary death, a nightly surrender of control. To practice this surrender consciously is to prepare the soul for the final surrender with grace. This transforms rest into a sacred ritual, not merely a biological necessity. Each night becomes practice in letting go, so that one day, when the final letting go arrives, it will not be foreign. This perspective also liberates joy. When you accept mortality, you stop postponing life. You no longer wait for perfect conditions to feel peace. Each night becomes an opportunity to live fully before the unknown tomorrow. Joy in simplicity, warmth, breath, quiet becomes enough. Joy soothes the soul more deeply than indulgence ever could, carrying it gently into sleep. At its deepest, contemplation of mortality aligns with the Stoic pursuit of harmony with nature. Death is not outside nature, but part of it, as natural as birth, growth, and decline. To resist it is to resist the cosmos itself. To accept it is to join the order of all things. This acceptance dissolves fear and anger alike. The soul rests because it is no longer at war with reality. Thus, after loosening the grip of desire and embracing simplicity, the Stoic turns to the highest reminder, that life itself is finite. By contemplating mortality at dusk, petty irritations vanish, gratitude deepens, courage strengthens, and presence is restored. The night then becomes more than rest. It becomes peace, a rehearsal for the silence that awaits all, carried out not with dread, but with calm acceptance. In this way, death awareness is not an enemy of sleep, but its greatest ally, transforming the close of day into the most profound serenity a human being can know. When the mind accepts mortality and learns to see the day's irritations as fleeting in the shadow of life's brevity, the heart becomes lighter. Yet, there is another source of unrest that often rises when the lights go out, the endless stream of thoughts. Worries chatter in circles, unfinished tasks, unresolved conflicts, uncertain futures. Left unchecked, this inner noise can be louder than any external disturbance. The Stoics discovered a way to tame this turbulence, transforming wandering worries into concise maxims. By distilling restless thoughts into clear principles, the mind replaces confusion with order, and silence grows where noise once ruled. The Stoic tradition valued brevity not only for style, but for discipline. A maxim is a short sentence, crafted to hold truth in a form so clear that it cannot be easily shaken. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself in fragments, simple reminders like, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." These lines were not written for eloquence, but for survival. They served as anchors in the storm of thought. By turning worries into such maxims at night, you strip them of their chaotic form and give them shape. Once shaped, they no longer spiral endlessly. They rest quietly as guiding truths. This practice begins with listening. When the mind swirls with anxious chatter, pause and notice the patterns. Perhaps you hear, "What if I fail tomorrow?" Instead of letting this repeat endlessly, reduce it to a maxim. Tomorrow is not mine to control, only my effort is. The shift is powerful. A worry becomes a principle. The mind stops looping and starts holding. Principles, unlike chatter, do not demand repetition. They settle into place like stones. Seneca urged his students to keep wise sayings close at hand, not as decoration, but as tools. He believed that a single good sentence, remembered at the right time, could save the soul from panic. At night, when worries crowd the mind, crafting such sentences is like forging armor. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, becomes the shield against fears of the unknown. No harm comes to the soul from insult, becomes the guard against replayed offenses. Each maxim replaces a restless worry with calm clarity. Transforming worries into maxims also strengthens judgment. The act of distillation forces the mind to separate truth from illusion. A worry in raw form often contains exaggeration. Everyone will think less of me if I stumble. When examined, it reduces to a simple principle. Other people's opinions are not within my power. The maxim exposes the illusion, leaving only reality. This honesty soothes the soul. Anxiety thrives on confusion, but clarity dissolves it. Another benefit of this practice is portability. A maxim once formed can be carried into tomorrow. While worry repeats endlessly and vanishes without resolution, a maxim endures. It can be recalled in moments of stress, guiding action with calm. In this way, the night's discipline becomes the day's strength. The restless energy that once robbed sleep is transformed into wisdom that steadies waking life. The practice also fosters humility. When you reduce a grand fear into a small maxim, you recognize its true scale. A looming dread that felt overwhelming is revealed as one line of truth. I may lose wealth, but virtue cannot be taken. The reduction shows that most worries are not mountains, but pebbles. The soul learns not to inflate them, and humility replaces agitation. This discipline mirrors the Stoic method of premeditatio, preparation of the mind through rehearsal. Just as they practiced imagining hardships to reduce their sting, here you practice refining thoughts to reduce their noise. The process itself becomes training. Each night you turn chaos into order, chatter into clarity, fear into principle. Over time, the mind learns this habit, producing maxims almost naturally. The soul becomes disciplined, less prone to wandering. Modern psychology reflects this wisdom. Cognitive therapy often encourages patients to identify distorted thoughts and reframe them into balanced statements. What therapists call reframing Stoics practiced as maxim-making. Both recognize that language shapes perception. The words we hold shape the state of the mind. By choosing concise truths over endless chatter, peace replaces turmoil. To apply this practice, begin by journaling or reflecting silently before bed. Notice one or two worries. Then ask, what truth underlies this? What principle can be drawn? Write or repeat it in the shortest form possible. Let it replace the chatter. Hold it briefly, then release. This act closes the loop, giving the mind closure rather than endless repetition. This practice also strengthens memory. A maxim, brief and powerful, is easy to recall. By repeating it softly as you drift to sleep, it plants itself in the subconscious. During the night, it shapes dreams. In the morning, it shapes action. Instead of carrying restless thoughts forward, you carry wisdom forward. The night becomes a passage not of noise, but of preparation. Another fruit of this discipline is simplicity. Worries are complex, filled with what-ifs and tangled scenarios. A maxim cuts through complexity. It speaks in one sentence what the mind could not resolve in 100 loops. Simplicity clears the path for stillness. The soul, once burdened by complexity, finds relief in clarity. There is also empowerment in this act. Worry makes us feel powerless, caught in loops we cannot escape. But forming a maxim is an act of creation. You take control by shaping thought. You prove to yourself that reason governs, not fear. This empowerment builds confidence, and confidence calms the heart. With calm, sleep enters naturally. At the deepest level, transforming worries into maxims is the Stoic art of living condensed into the night. Philosophy is not abstract when it is turned into a sentence that quiets fear. It becomes living wisdom, carried in the heart, like a lantern in darkness. Each maxim becomes part of the inner citadel, strengthening its walls. With every evening of practice, the fortress grows, and sleep rests safely inside. Thus, after contemplating mortality to dissolve petty irritations, the Stoic takes the next step, shaping the chatter of worry into guiding truths. By turning restless thoughts into concise maxims, the mind replaces noise with clarity, fear with principle, and agitation with peace. In this way, the night becomes not only rest, but refinement, a quiet forge where the soul is trained in the language of wisdom. When worries are distilled into maxims, the mind settles into clarity, and the noise that once filled the night loses its power. Yet even with thoughts transformed into guiding truths, another imbalance often lingers, one born not from within, but from how life is lived against the rhythm of nature. Many lie awake not because of what they think, but because of how far their bodies have drifted from the harmony of natural cycles. The Stoics, who saw the universe as an ordered whole governed by logos, taught that peace comes from aligning with nature rather than resisting it. Sleep, like every part of life, is most restful when it flows with nature's rhythm instead of artificial pressures. The Stoic cosmology viewed existence as a great web of interconnection, where every star, river, plant, and breath followed its place in order. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to live according to nature, not as an abstract idea, but as a practical law of peace. For him, this meant respecting the cycles of life, growth and decay, work and rest, waking and sleeping. At night, to honor this order is to return the body to its rightful place within the rhythm of the cosmos. When sleep is forced against this rhythm, pushed late into the night by excess light or cut short by endless striving, the soul resists and rest becomes fragile. Artificial pressures distort the body's natural cycles. The demand for constant productivity, the glow of screens, the pursuit of entertainment deep into the night, all push against the rhythm that nature has set since the beginning of life. The sun rises and sets, the body follows, but modern habits often ignore this pattern. The Stoics would see this as a kind of rebellion against the Logos, a refusal to live in harmony with the larger order. Such rebellion cannot bring peace. Peace belongs to those who align themselves with the whole, not to those who resist it. To reconnect with natural sleep is to remember simplicity. Darkness was once a signal for rest, light a call to action. The Stoics, living before artificial light, followed these rhythms instinctively. For them, the night was a time for reflection and surrender, not for prolonged activity. Relearning this rhythm means respecting darkness as nature's invitation. When the sun sets, the body is not meant to chase stimulation, but to prepare for quiet. Respecting this law eases the transition into sleep, for the body no longer battles confusion. This alignment also teaches humility. Human beings often act as though they stand above nature, bending it to their will. But the Stoic knew that we are part of nature, bound by its cycles. To deny this is arrogance. To accept it is wisdom. Sleep becomes deeper when entered with humility, as a participant in the rhythm of the cosmos rather than its master. This humility softens restlessness, for the soul recognizes its place in something greater. Another fruit of aligning with natural cycles is balance. The body functions in rhythms, the beating of the heart, the flow of breath, the rise and fall of hormones. Sleep, too, is rhythmic. To disrupt it with irregular patterns is to disturb balance, and imbalance breeds unrest. By honoring consistency, going to bed and rising at steady times, the Stoic respects the body's natural order. Balance, once restored, allows rest to flow without resistance. The harmony of nature also invites presence. To notice the fading light, the cooling air, the quiet of dusk, is to be reminded of your connection to the larger whole. These signals are not interruptions, but invitations. By attending to them, the mind learns to let go of the artificial demands that keep it awake. Nature itself becomes the teacher of rest. To ignore these signals is to drown in noise. To heed them is to return to stillness. Marcus Aurelius often wrote that what is according to nature cannot be harmful. Sleep, therefore, is not an obstacle to ambition or a waste of time, as some may think. It is natural, and what is natural is necessary. To resist it is to resist life itself. By embracing sleep as part of nature's law, guilt over rest dissolves. Rest becomes not indulgence, but obedience to the cosmos. This reframing replaces anxiety with reverence, and reverence opens the soul to peace. Another benefit of this alignment is liberation from artificial pressures. Society often glorifies overwork, late nights, and constant busyness. But the Stoic, guided by reason, sees through this illusion. What is natural is sustainable. What is artificial collapses. By choosing to live by natural rhythm, you free yourself from the tyranny of endless striving. Freedom from pressure calms the soul, and calm is fertile ground for sleep. This perspective also fosters gratitude. To lie down in harmony with the setting sun is to recognize the gift of cycles themselves. The rising and setting of light, the turning of seasons, the constancy of rhythm, these are reminders of order in the universe. Gratitude for this order turns the night into a sanctuary. Instead of fearing wakefulness or resenting rest, The soul rejoices in being part of the cosmos's dance. Gratitude softens anxiety and ushers in rest more gently than any external comfort could. Modern science supports this Stoic wisdom. Studies of circadian rhythms show that artificial light and irregular schedules disrupt sleep cycles, leading to restlessness and fatigue. Exposure to natural light, consistent timing, and reduced stimulation in the evening restore balance and deepen rest. The Stoics, though without this science, knew the truth experientially. Harmony with nature is harmony with oneself. To practice this alignment, begin by respecting natural cues. Dim lights when night falls, step outside to notice the dusk, and let the body prepare for rest without overstimulation. Avoid forcing productivity deep into the night, for it resists the rhythm of nature. Instead, treat evening as a time of surrender, in harmony with the cosmos. Over time, the body learns to trust this rhythm, and sleep comes with ease. There is also a deeper spiritual dimension. For the Stoics, to live according to nature was to live according to logos, the rational order that governs all. To align with sleep cycles is therefore not merely a biological adjustment, but a spiritual one. It is to honor the law of the universe, to live in accordance with the order that sustains stars and seasons alike. This alignment brings not only rest, but serenity, for the soul feels in tune with the eternal. Thus, after turning worries into maxims and quieting the chatter of the mind, the Stoic extends harmony outward, aligning rest with the rhythm of nature itself. Sleep ceases to be forced or artificial. It becomes part of the cosmic order, a nightly return to balance, humility, and gratitude. In this harmony, rest is no longer fragile but secure, carried by the same rhythm that carries the universe itself. When the soul learns to rest in rhythm with the order of nature, sleep becomes smoother and more restorative. Yet, even when the night is entered with harmony, there remains one realm that can unsettle peace: the world of dreams. Dreams often arrive vivid, strange, or troubling. They may replay fears, awaken old desires, or present unsettling images that linger into the morning. Many wake disturbed, searching for hidden meanings, fearing omens, or attaching too much weight to what appeared in the silence of sleep. The Stoics, with their clarity about what belongs within our control and what does not, offered freedom from this burden by teaching indifference toward dream content. Dreams, like fortune, belong to externals, neither good nor bad in themselves. To treat them as indifference is to prevent unnecessary anxiety and to protect the calm of both night and day. The Stoic framework divided life into what is good, what is bad, and what is indifferent. Virtue was the only true good, vice the only true bad, and all else, from wealth to health, from praise to scorn, were indifference, carrying no moral weight unless guided by reason. Dreams, being involuntary, fall clearly into this category. They do not arise from deliberate choice, but from the movements of the body and mind during rest. To judge them as omens or condemn oneself for their content is to misapply reason. The wise approach is simple: observe without attachment, acknowledge without over-interpretation, and return to what lies within power. Dreams unsettle because the mind is tempted to treat them as messages. A nightmare may be seen as a prediction of suffering, a pleasant dream as a sign of reward, a confusing dream as a puzzle demanding resolution. But Marcus Aurelius would remind himself that what is beyond the rational faculty is not to be feared or worshipped. A dream is nothing more than the play of impressions stripped of coherence. By reminding yourself of this at dawn, you reclaim freedom. What you saw in sleep has no claim over your waking peace. Seneca warned against superstition, noting that people often enslave themselves by fearing signs and omens. Dreams easily fall into this trap. To interpret them endlessly is to hand power to shadows. The Stoic path is to see through the illusion. A nightmare is not a prophecy, but the product of memory, fear, or digestion. A dream of fortune is not a promise, but a fleeting image. Treating them as indifference allows the mind to remain unshaken. Anxiety dissolves when you recognize that dreams carry no command over virtue. Another freedom gained through this practice is release from guilt. Many wake troubled by dreams of anger, desire, or fear, judging themselves as though they had chosen those actions. But Epictetus would remind us that virtue and vice exist only where choice exists. Dreams are not chosen, they are endured. To blame oneself for dream content is as foolish as blaming oneself for the shape of clouds. The ruling faculty was asleep, inactive, uninvolved. Only waking choices carry moral weight. Recognizing this truth removes unnecessary guilt and restores serenity. This indifference does not mean ignoring dreams entirely. Reflection may reveal patterns of thought, showing where the mind has been occupied. A recurring dream of fear may highlight worries not yet resolved. But even here, the dream is not prophecy, only mirror. It points to the state of the soul, but does not dictate its future. This distinction preserves both wisdom and calm. The dream is noticed, perhaps noted, but not treated as a tyrant. Reason remains sovereign. Indifference toward dreams also protects the night itself. Those who overinterpret may carry fear of dreaming into bedtime, anxious about what visions might arrive. This anticipation itself creates unrest, disturbing sleep cycles. But when you adopt Stoic detachment, the fear vanishes. Dreams are seen as passing shadows, neither to be sought nor feared. The night is entered freely, without resistance. Freedom from expectation is itself a sedative, easing the transition into deep rest. Modern science echoes this Stoic clarity. Research shows that dreams often reflect random neural activity, shaped by memory and emotion, but lacking deliberate purpose. The brain organizes impressions, rehearses possibilities, and clears debris. To treat this process as prophecy is to misread its nature. The Stoic, centuries before neuroscience, recognized the same. Dreams are not under our control, therefore they belong to indifference. Another benefit of this indifference is focus. By refusing to dwell on dreams, you preserve energy for what truly matters, your conduct in waking life. Virtue is built through action, not through speculation on images of the night. This focus strengthens discipline, ensuring that the mind remains oriented toward what is useful. Instead of chasing meaning in fragments, you invest in clarity through reason. Sleep then becomes refreshment, not a source of confusion. This practice also strengthens humility. Dreams remind us of the limits of control. No matter how disciplined the waking life, sleep may produce images unworthy of the self. To accept them without judgment is to embrace human nature. Humility softens restlessness, for the soul no longer demands perfection in what cannot be controlled. Acceptance brings peace, and peace fosters rest. Indifference toward dreams also builds courage. By refusing to treat nightmares as omens, you dissolve their power to frighten. A fearful dream, when treated as nothing, becomes nothing. courage is practiced even in sleep, for you train yourself not to fear shadows. This courage carries into waking life, strengthening resolve against baseless anxieties. To apply this discipline, begin each morning with reflection. What I dreamed does not belong to me, only what I choose belongs to me. Repeat it until it settles. If a dream lingers, reduce it to a statement of indifference. This is only an impression, nothing more. With practice, the mind learns not to be disturbed. The energy once wasted on speculation becomes fuel for virtue. At its deepest level, indifference to dreams aligns with the Stoic vision of freedom. The sage is free because nothing external enslaves them. Not wealth, not reputation, not fortune, and not even the content of sleep. By practicing this discipline, you extend sovereignty of the ruling faculty into the night. Dreams pass like clouds, and you remain the clear sky. Thus, after aligning sleep with the rhythm of nature, the Stoic turns to the realm of dreams themselves. By treating them as indifferents, neither feared nor worshipped, the soul protects itself from needless anxiety. Night becomes lighter, morning freer, and peace more stable. In this way, even the shadows of sleep are brought under reason's discipline, and the mind rests unshaken. When the fleeting images of dreams are placed where they belong, among the indifferents, the mind no longer wakes burdened by superstition or guilt. Freedom from shadows clears the path for deeper rest. Yet the Stoics did not stop at managing thoughts. They also trained the body to serve reason. They taught that comfort, though pleasant, can weaken the spirit when clung to too tightly. To prepare for life's harsher trials, they practiced voluntary discomfort, choosing at times to live with less than they could have. This discipline, when applied before bed, transforms the night into a quiet school of resilience. By embracing small austerities, such as a cooler room, a firmer surface, or fewer layers, one learns that rest does not depend on luxury, but on the strength of the soul. The philosophy behind this practice is simple. Fortune cannot always be trusted. Health, wealth, and comfort are unstable. If peace relies on them, peace is fragile. But if you can rest even in simplicity, then fate cannot steal your calm. Seneca urged his students to occasionally eat coarse bread, wear plain clothing, and sleep on the ground, asking themselves afterward, "Is this what I feared?" The purpose was not self-punishment, but liberation from fear. When you discover you can endure less, the grip of desire loosens, and gratitude for what you have grows stronger. Voluntary discomfort before bed serves the same purpose. A cooler room reminds you that the body adapts. A simple blanket shows that warmth need not be excessive. Resting without a pillow demonstrates that luxury is not required for sleep. Each choice builds resilience. When the body accepts austerity without complaint, the mind becomes freer. Instead of needing perfect conditions, you learn to rest in any conditions. This freedom is itself a form of strength. The practice also sharpens gratitude. After a night of simplicity, returning to comfort feels richer. A soft bed becomes a treasure, a warm blanket, a blessing, a pillow, a luxury. Without contrast, comforts are taken for granted. With contrast, they shine. Gratitude calms the restless urge for more. At night, this gratitude translates into ease, for the soul is content with little. Another fruit of austerity is humility. To live always in comfort breeds entitlement, the expectation that ease is deserved. But voluntary discomfort reminds you of your fragility. You are not above nature, not immune to hardship. This humility prepares you to meet life's real trials without arrogance. At night, it softens the heart, replacing demands with acceptance. Acceptance is fertile soil for rest. The Stoics valued training. Just as soldiers practice in peace to prepare for war, philosophers practice discomfort in safety to prepare for adversity. By sleeping in simplicity, you rehearse the possibility of loss. Should misfortune strip away comfort, you will not collapse, for you have already tasted it. This rehearsal removes fear, and when fear is absent, the mind rests. There is also strength in self-mastery. To choose discomfort willingly is to prove that reason commands, not desire. The body may crave softness, but the ruling faculty decides otherwise. Each act of restraint reinforces this mastery. A person ruled by comfort is fragile. A person who rules over comfort is free. Freedom from dependency is freedom from restlessness. Modern research confirms what Stoics sensed. Cooler rooms, simpler bedding, and reduced stimulation often improve sleep quality by supporting natural rhythms. What was practiced as philosophy also aligns with biology. Simplicity serves rest. Voluntary discomfort not only builds resilience, but often deepens the very sleep it seems to deny. To apply this discipline, begin small. Lower the temperature slightly, reduce the number of pillows, or lie briefly on a firmer surface. Approach it as training, not deprivation. The aim is not to suffer, but to learn sufficiency. Over time, these practices strengthen confidence. You learn that rest belongs not to possessions, but to discipline. This practice also strengthens courage. By exposing yourself to minor hardship, you prove to yourself that you can endure more than you thought. Courage is not built in theory, but in small acts of endurance. Each night of voluntary discomfort becomes a quiet victory, adding to the fortress of the soul. With courage strengthened, anxieties that once disturbed rest lose their hold. At its core, voluntary discomfort aligns you with nature. The body was not made for endless luxury, but for adaptability. Returning to simplicity is returning to your natural state. In this alignment, peace arises. The night becomes not a struggle for perfect conditions, but a return to balance with what is. Thus, after freeing the mind from the weight of dreams, the Stoic strengthens the body through discipline. By practicing voluntary discomfort before bed, resilience grows, gratitude deepens, humility softens, and freedom from dependence is secured. In this way, the night becomes not only rest, but training, preparing the soul to face fortune's changes without fear. And in that preparation, sleep arrives not as indulgence, but as strength, carrying the calm of resilience into dawn. After learning to accept voluntary discomfort, the soul gains resilience by discovering that peace does not depend on soft beds or perfect conditions. Yet resilience alone is not the final step toward nightly calm. The Stoics believed that the mind could be trained not only to endure hardship, but to embrace it. They taught that adversity, far from being a curse, is raw material for growth. To end the day in harmony with this truth, they turned to a ritual of gratitude, not just for blessings, but for difficulties themselves. By thanking fate for obstacles, the mind rewires its relationship with stress. What once felt like a burden becomes a teacher, and the heart finds freedom where it once found resistance. Gratitude for adversity may sound unnatural, even absurd at first. Pain, delay, insult, and loss are not experiences most people welcome, but the Stoics saw them differently. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that every obstacle was fuel for the fire of virtue. Seneca wrote that fortune tests the strong, shaping them through trial. Epictetus insisted that external hardships reveal the strength of the ruling faculty. To thank fate for adversity is to recognize this hidden gift. Nighttime gratitude turns the sharp edge of difficulty into a tool for resilience, easing the weight that would otherwise carry into sleep. This practice begins with reflection. As the day closes, recall not only its joys but its struggles. Perhaps someone spoke harshly, perhaps plans failed, perhaps pain returned. Instead of resenting these moments, acknowledge them as exercises in justice, courage, temperance, or wisdom. Gratitude transforms them. The rude remark becomes training in patience. The failure becomes training in perseverance. The pain becomes training in endurance. By reinterpreting adversity as practice, you release its poison. Gratitude neutralizes bitterness, replacing it with calm. Gratitude for adversity also strengthens humility. To thank fate for obstacles is to accept that you do not command the universe. Events unfold according to nature, not according to personal desire. By showing gratitude for this order, even when it resists your will, you dissolve arrogance. Humility softens the restless urge to control. With humility, the mind no longer rages at fate, but flows with it. This flow is the essence of Stoic peace and the foundation for rest. Another fruit of this practice is freedom from resentment. Many people carry into the night a catalogue of grievances, replaying how others wronged them. This replay fuels insomnia, but gratitude disarms resentment. To thank fate for difficult people is to see them as partners in training, unwitting teachers of patience and forgiveness. Resentment cannot survive where gratitude lives. Freed from bitterness, the mind relaxes into rest. This discipline also deepens courage. When you thank fate for adversity, you no longer fear it. Hardship loses its power to intimidate. Each difficulty is reinterpreted as a gift, proof that the universe considers you capable of bearing weight. Fear is replaced by confidence, and confidence eases the heart. A fearless soul does not tremble in the dark hours of night. The practice also builds perspective. Gratitude shifts attention from what is lost to what is gained. Even suffering, when reframed, produces growth. By thanking fate for trials, you remind yourself that nothing is wasted. Every event, pleasant or harsh, contributes to the shaping of character. This perspective dissolves frustration. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you ask, "How can this serve me?" Such questions calm the restless mind. Modern psychology echoes this wisdom. Studies show that gratitude reduces stress, lowers blood pressure, and improves sleep quality. Gratitude rewires the brain, reducing focus on negative events and increasing resilience. What Stoics practiced as philosophy, science confirms as therapy. By thanking fate for adversity, you literally reshape the patterns of thought, replacing stress with calm acceptance. To practice this ritual, begin by listing the day's obstacles. Write or recall them silently. Then, for each, state the virtue it trained. An argument trained patience. A delay trained perseverance. A disappointment trained detachment. Speak gratitude sincerely, even if softly. End with the reminder, fate sends what is needed. My task is to use it well. This ritual transforms the mind's posture. Instead of clinging to grievances, you close the day in appreciation. This discipline also deepens connection to the Logos, the rational order of the universe. To thank fate is to affirm trust in the order of things, even when its design is unclear. This trust removes anxiety, for the soul no longer struggles against reality. Sleep becomes a surrender into harmony, not a flight from chaos. Gratitude for adversity also strengthens joy. When even hardship is welcomed, life itself becomes lighter. You stop dividing experiences into good and bad, pleasant and painful. All become material for growth. Joy no longer depends on fortune's gifts, but arises from reason's interpretation. This joy lingers into the night, softening the transition into rest. At its deepest, this practice aligns with the Stoic conviction that nothing external can harm the soul. If adversity is interpreted as training, it cannot wound virtue. It can only strengthen it. Gratitude makes this truth alive. By thanking fate, you confirm that nothing is wasted, nothing is hostile, nothing lies outside the possibility of growth. With this conviction, peace replaces stress, and sleep arrives naturally. Thus, after training in voluntary discomfort, the Stoic completes the evening discipline with gratitude. By thanking fate for obstacles, the mind rewires its response to stress, dissolving resentment, softening fear, and planting joy. The night then becomes not a place of complaint, but a sanctuary of appreciation, where even hardship is welcomed as part of the order of things. In that sanctuary, the soul rests untroubled, ready to rise at dawn, strengthened by the very trials it once resisted. Gratitude for adversity softens the heart, removing resentment and turning trials into quiet teachers. Yet even this posture of thankfulness points to something greater at the center of Stoic practice: the recognition that everything unfolds under the guidance of Logos, the rational order that governs all existence. The final step before true rest is not only to accept this order, but to surrender into it fully. In stillness, the soul embodies Logos itself, resting in the certainty that nothing in the universe falls outside its law. This surrender, far from weakness, becomes the deepest sedative, quieting every fear, dissolving every restless impulse, and allowing sleep to arrive with serenity. The Stoics saw Logos as the reason woven through all of nature, the structure that holds the cosmos together. To live according to nature was to live according to this reason. For Marcus Aurelius, harmony with Logos was the essence of peace. He wrote that storms, loss, and change were all threads in the fabric of order. By recognizing this, the wise person rests as part of the whole, unshaken by what the whole contains. At night, embodying Logos through stillness means allowing the mind to release its struggle, to align itself with the rhythm of the universe, and to surrender without resistance. Stillness here is not mere silence. It is active trust, the deliberate laying down of resistance. When the mind no longer fights to control what it cannot, when it no longer argues against the flow of nature, it enters harmony. This harmony acts as a balm. Anxiety, which feeds on resistance, has no fuel in surrender. Fear, which grows in opposition, loses its grip in trust. The soul that accepts Logos as order rests like a child in the arms of a parent, not because life is easy, but because life is guided by reason greater than itself. This surrender also clarifies identity. The individual is not a stranger in the cosmos, but a participant in its order. Breath itself is Logos, animating all things. To embody Logos in stillness is to realize that you already belong, that you are not an isolated fragment, but part of a vast, rational whole. This recognition removes loneliness, a hidden cause of many restless nights. You rest not as one abandoned, but as one woven into the fabric of the universe. The practice of embodying Logos through stillness also deepens resilience. When you trust that all events, whether pleasant or harsh, are part of rational order, you stop labeling them as enemies. Change becomes a natural process, not a disruption. Loss becomes a transition, not destruction. Even death becomes a return, not an end. With this perspective, agitation fades, for nothing can befall you that does not belong to nature. Rest comes easily when nothing is feared. Stillness rooted in Logos also dissolves urgency. Much sleeplessness arises from the belief that you must control, fix, or achieve everything immediately. But when you embody Logos, you see that the cosmos unfolds in its time. Seeds sprout when ready, rivers carve valleys over centuries, stars burn for ages. Your own life is part of this rhythm. By surrendering to it, you drop the weight of false urgency. The night no longer feels like stolen time, but a necessary part of nature's design. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to return inward, to find calm in the order of the universe. This inward retreat was not escape, but alignment. To embody Logos meant to bring the ruling faculty into agreement with nature. At night, this alignment is expressed in stillness, closing the eyes not as withdrawal from duty, but as participation in the universal cycle of activity and rest. The sun sets, creatures grow silent, and the body, too, follows. In stillness, you become part of the larger rhythm. Another fruit of this practice is freedom from illusion. Much agitation comes from thinking that the universe is chaotic, random, or hostile. But the Stoic teaches that everything has place and purpose, even when hidden. Trusting this order dissolves despair. When the heart knows that nothing is wasted, not even suffering, it rests. Gratitude grows, fear subsides, and sleep comes as a natural extension of trust. Stillness also purifies the mind. When you stop chasing thoughts, stop resisting events, and stop clinging to desires, the mind clears. This clarity reveals the Logos within you, the rational spark that mirrors the rational cosmos. To embody it is to recognize your highest self. This recognition itself is peace, for it returns you to simplicity. Simplicity is the doorway to rest. Modern science speaks of similar truths in different terms. Meditation practices, which quiet the mind and foster trust in larger patterns, reduce anxiety and improve sleep quality. The Stoics anticipated this by grounding stillness in philosophy. Their version of meditation was not emptying the mind, but aligning it with Logos. This alignment is both spiritual and practical, dissolving unrest at its root. To practice this at night, sit or lie quietly and remind yourself, all things follow the order of nature. I am part of this order. Nothing outside Logos can touch me. Let the breath slow, not by force, but by trust. Each exhale becomes a surrender, each inhale a reminder of participation in the whole. Gradually, the body follows the mind into stillness. Sleep arrives not as a fight lost, but as a harmony entered. This surrender also strengthens courage. To trust Logos is to accept that whatever comes is not random, but part of reason's law. Even hardships lose their sting when seen as part of the rational whole. Courage grows because you know you will not be abandoned to chaos. You are carried by order itself. Fear cannot coexist with such trust. The fearless soul rests deeply. At the deepest level, embodying logos through stillness is the fulfillment of Stoic practice. All earlier disciplines, gratitude, resilience, moderation, reflection, prepare the soul for this final harmony. When resistance is dissolved, when gratitude embraces even adversity, when desires are quieted, the soul is ready to embody the order of all things. In this state, rest is not separate from philosophy, but its fruit. Thus, after giving thanks for obstacles and seeing them as teachers, the Stoic completes the nightly discipline by surrendering fully into logos. In stillness, the soul aligns with the rational order of the universe, finding the deepest sedative not in comfort or distraction, but in harmony. Sleep becomes an act of trust, a nightly merging with the rhythm of nature, a surrender that is not defeat, but the highest freedom. As the night closes and these hours of reflection draw to an end, you've walked through more than a meditation. You've stepped into a philosophy of life. You've seen sleep not as an escape, but as a daily death that frees you from fear. You've practiced journaling to clear the mind, embraced amor fati to release control, used negative visualization to strip worries of their bite, and learned to detach from impressions that once fueled racing thoughts. You've redefined stress as indifferent, lifted your gaze with the view from above, and discovered how even pain can become a teacher. You've steadied the breath under reason, let go of wealth's illusions, and anchored yourself in virtue before closing your eyes. You've sorted thoughts with Epictetus's dichotomy of control, fortified your inner citadel, and reframed rest as ethical rehearsal for tomorrow. You've simplified desire, reflected on mortality, forged maxims from worry, and aligned yourself with nature's rhythms. You've learned to treat dreams as indifference, to train resilience with voluntary discomfort, to thank fate for adversity, and finally, to embody logos itself through stillness. All of this forms one truth. Stress loses its grip when the mind lives in harmony with reason, with nature, and with itself. Tonight you have practiced what the greatest Stoics lived. Carry this forward, and each night can be a sanctuary, each dawn a new chance to live with clarity, courage, and peace. Now, I want to hear from you. Which Stoic lesson tonight spoke to you the most? Was it gratitude for adversity, or the view from above? Or perhaps learning to see stress as indifferent? Leave your reflections in the comments. I'd love to know how you'll carry this into your own life. And if you found value here, don't forget to subscribe.